I didn't end broadcast mode yet.
Okay.
Don't forget that there's an addendum.
Say again?
There's an addendum to the.
I didn't know that.
There is.
The public here?
Yep.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the board meeting of August 8th. It was originally scheduled for August 4th, but had to be postponed due to the hurricane. And thank you for joining us this morning. The major purpose of this morning's meeting is to have the superintendent review for us the plan that we'll be submitting to the State Department of Education for the reopening of schools in September. Before we start, I would like to have a roll call. Mrs. Slunt?
Cordolino,
Here.
Mr. Daughtry,
Here.
Mrs. Fano,
Here.
Dr. Modrak,
Here.
Mr. O'Brien,
Here.
Mr. Rappaport,
Here.
Ms. Zuckerman,
Here.
Mr. Palma,
Here.
Mr. Grau.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance, please. I know there's just 4 of us here. We'll stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Sunshine Law, Mr. Slunt?
The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provision of the Act, the Montville Township Board of Education provided a public notice of this meeting, which included the time, date, and location that was posted at the Montville Township Municipal Building, all Montville Public Schools, the Montville Public Library, the Montville Township Board of Education Administrative Office Building, the district website, and advertised in the Daily Record, the board's official newspaper, on July 18, 2020.
Thank you. There's no representative at this point. I would like to turn the meeting over to our superintendent, Dr. Rovtar, for the presentation of the plan. Dr. Rovtar?
Okay, thank you. Let me just get the plan up on the screen here. Okay. So I want to thank the members of the District Reopening Committee. They're listed there on the screen. It was quite a large group of people, but a very dedicated group of people who contributed from their level of expertise to the actual creation of the plan. I'm very grateful for their involvement and their wisdom. I'm going to lead us through a summary of the plan. I'm going to try to do that as quickly as I can so that we can then entertain any comments and questions from the board and or members of the public. So the conditions for learning, obviously we believe that in-person learning is important for academic reasons, but also to support the social and emotional well-being of our students. In-person learning provides greater continuity of instruction, and the district has been guided by the flexibility provided in the road back. That's the department's guidelines for a reopening plan. I'm not going to read these, but there are 10 areas that the road back sets forth that must be covered in the plan. Our plan does cover all 10 of these areas, and I'm going to walk you through them one by one. In terms of social distancing, the district will follow 6 feet social distancing when conditions permit, but we also recognize that in some settings, a 3 to 6 foot range will be observed. All students and staff members will wear face coverings, and additional modifications such as desks facing the same way and desk shields will be utilized. Conditions for learning. Parents and visitors will be accepted at district facilities by appointment only. All visitors must wear face coverings. Schedules will be designed to minimize student movement in the buildings to the extent possible. An example of this at the elementary level is that instead of students going to the art or music room for instruction, those teachers will have their programs on a cart and will come to the classroom to teach the students. One-way corridors, staggered passing and dismissal schedules, and signage will be used to promote social distancing within the buildings. Students will carry materials in backpacks and will not use lockers. The instructional plan that we have developed for the middle and high school is a cohort model. In both of those schools, we will have half of the student body, considered cohort A, attend school in person on Monday and Tuesday. All of our students will be virtual on Wednesday, and then cohort B will attend school in person on Thursday and Friday. On the days that the students are not in school, they will follow along virtually at home, live stream from the classroom, so they will be with the normal teacher. The instructional plan at the elementary level calls for in-person instruction for all students Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Wednesday is a virtual day for those students. All of our schools, elementary, middle, and high school, will all be dismissed on an early dismissal basis for those in-person days. The virtual day schedule has been set forth in the plan. It differs a little bit at the various levels, but part of the reason we have scheduled this is to allow for there to be deep cleaning and sanitization of the buildings on Wednesday. Virtual Wednesday, the middle and high school students will follow a synchronous model that will run on the same schedule as the other school days. That the actual, class schedule for both of those schools is included in the plan. The virtual Wednesday at the elementary level provides a schedule of instruction in ELA, mathematics, social studies, and science, and there will be virtual interaction with the students. There is some detail in the plan in terms of what our expectations are for virtual learning. We have certainly increased the rigor from what took place in the spring. Virtual interaction between the students and teachers is expected on a daily basis. Students also have the option of full-time remote. And I did send a notification to parents. There is a survey that's currently open in the Genesis Parent Portal. That survey will be open until midnight on August 12th. It will allow parents to select the full-time remote option for their students. The remote learning plan for students in grades 6 to 12 actually encompasses them following their regular schedule, simply being at home. To do that, they must attend every day. Students in grades K to 5 will likely be assigned to a cross-district full-time remote class, and that is because we believe that we will probably not have a sufficient number of students in any one of the 5 elementary schools to create a class. So I know parents have asked, what will the size of the remote classes be? We are being guided by the district's policy on class size, which ranges from 23 to 25, 26. So those classes will be configured with the same class size limits as the in-person students. In terms of transition between in-person and full-time remote, we understand that parents may want to make that change. The guidance that we have received from the Department of Education allows districts to establish the parameters for that. The parameters that we have established are that those changes can be made at the start of a marking period or a trimester at the elementary level. If you want to make such a change, you would need to notify the building principal in writing 10 school days prior to the start of the new marking period or trimester. That goes both ways, whether you're in person or remote, making that switch back, we need that 10-day notification. Access to technology, the district does continue to offer school-issued devices to all students. If you have not already accessed the parent survey, one of the questions in the parent survey, it asks whether technology is necessary, and if you select yes, we will make arrangements to have a device available for you. We encourage everyone to take advantage of that. There are certain advantages to us in having you use the school technology. It allows us to update things on those devices, and it's just a better operational situation for us. The documentation associated with the use of a district device is available in the Genesis Parent Access. General health and safety guidelines. I know many parents have asked about temperature screenings. The CDC does not recommend that these screenings take place in the schools, so the district has acquired an app that we will use for all students and staff members, and daily reporting is required. The app asks a number of questions in addition to the temperature, and those are the typical screening questions. If there are any other symptoms, have people traveled, those typical screening questions are also involved in the app. If students or staff test positive, they must isolate, quarantine themselves for 14 days. Students with a medical condition that might prevent them from wearing a mask are strongly encouraged to select the full-time remote option, and that is for their own health and safety, as well as the health and safety of their teachers and their fellow students. We also, as we near the end of summer, are reminding people to be mindful of New Jersey's travel advisories. And I'm not sure what the total number of states. I know it changes typically on Tuesdays, but there are a hefty number of states. And if parents are traveling on vacation, we encourage you to do it soon so that you can do the 14-day quarantine period prior to returning to school. In terms of classrooms, testing, therapy rooms, we are maintaining social distancing to the extent that we can. Face coverings are required. We are discontinuing any activities that gather students together, such as teachers inviting students to the rugs for story time. We are discouraging the use of any shared objects among students. We have installed hand sanitizer dispensers at the entrance to each classroom, and we will be encouraging frequent hand washing and sanitizing of hands for the students. In terms of transportation, all of this information obviously is included in the plan. Our buses will be sanitized between each run and again at the end of the day. Bus drivers will also complete self-screenings prior to starting their route. Students will be assigned seats on the bus, and this information will be available in Parent Access along with your bus route assignment. We'll be loading buses from the back to the front, so students, we minimize the passing as they're walking down the bus aisle. Students must wear a face covering in order to board the bus. The bus drivers will have a supply of emergency face coverings if the students don't have those. We will be enhancing the ventilation by having the bus windows open as the weather permits. We encourage parents chaperoning their students at the bus stop to also wear face coverings for everyone's protection. Parents do have the right to waive transportation, and there is a question to that effect in the return to school survey. In terms of screening and PPE, we are providing PPE to the school nurses and specific staff members who have more intense engagement with students, such as our preschool students. They have increased exposure risk. All district employees will be provided with 5 face coverings, and they're responsible to clean and maintain them. Each school will have a designated isolation area for students and staff who exhibit COVID-19 symptoms and need to obtain a test. I cannot stress this strongly enough that parents and staff members, I think we all have some social responsibility with this. To do self-screening, to screen your students. If you are not well, please do not come to school. Do not send your children to school. I think Montville has done an excellent job of managing the disease. I think currently we're at 2 active cases. There was a period of days where we had 0. So I think folks in town have taken it very seriously. I would encourage you, plead with you, to have the same level of concern with regard to sending your students to school. Don't send them if they're sick or exhibiting any symptoms. Contact tracing. As per the direction of the Department of Education, the contact tracing shall be managed by the Montville Township Board of Health. Any confirmed positive cases will be reported to the Board of Health, and it is the Board of Health that manages the notification process. So we intend to work with them. If any cases are identified in schools, we will certainly be providing them class lists or any other group or cohort information so that they know who the cases have been in contact with and can make those contact tracing phone calls. It is not, and this was the procedure that we had in place in the spring, just as the virus was breaking before we closed. It is not appropriate for the district to do those personal notifications. That should come through the Board of Health, and it will. Our facilities cleaning practices, there is, again, very detailed information about this included in the plan. We're encouraging students and staff to bring their own water to school to minimize the use of the drinking fountains. The drinking fountains also have bottle fillers, and those will be open, but the drinking fountains will not be operational. Again, we have hand sanitizer available in all classrooms and offices. We have a schedule of increased routine cleaning and disinfection that we have worked together with our new custodial service, Aramark, to put that in place. We have contracted for additional custodial staff to assist in the buildings during the day for the periodic disinfecting and the cleaning of those high-touch surfaces during the school day. And again, as I said, the detailed cleaning protocol is included in the plan. The district's HVAC systems have a fresh air component, and we will be adjusting that to maximize the circulation of fresh air in the building. What that may mean is that at different points in the year, such as in the fall when it's warmer, our classrooms may be a little bit warmer. In the colder weather, the classrooms may be a little cooler. So we're suggesting that people dress in layers so that you can adjust. But we will be maximizing fresh air. We'll also be installing bipolar ionization units. These are ozone-free units, and they filter the building's air, and they require less fresh air to be circulated. Where possible, we will be installing additional HEPA filters, and we will be replacing all the filters in our units with the routine frequency. Meals. We are not serving lunch, and so we will be providing, we'll be delivering those students who qualify for free and reduced meals. We will be delivering those meals to the students' homes. There will, again, as we do every September, be another application process, and parents are encouraged to apply for free and reduced meals if your economic situation falls within those parameters. Recess and physical education, we will not be providing recess because we're on an early dismissal schedule. Physical education classes and recess activities, we won't be having recess, but if we do open and are with lunch at some point, we will have those planned to minimize the need for students to have direct contact with equipment or each other. And as I mentioned previously, the locker rooms will be closed. Students will not be using lockers. At the present time, we are not permitting any field trips. Also, we are not allowing any external groups to have permission to use our facilities for meetings or activities at the present time. and we are following the directives and guidelines that have been provided by the New Jersey Interscholastic Athletics Association with regard to athletic practices or contests. So that concludes the overview of the plan. I do expect that at a later point during this meeting that the board will take action to adopt the plan, and we will submit that to the New Jersey Department of Education for their review.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rovtar. As all of you know, it's pretty fluid out there. So this plan, it could change almost next week, week after, day after that. So it's a very fluid plan because when we get directions from the state of New Jersey, the Department of Ed, or the governor's office, this plan would have to be amended or changed. But I would like to thank the administration and the members of the committee. I think they've done a great job in putting these parameters together and guidelines. And a lot of it depends upon the support from the parents to make sure that a lot of the areas that were discussed and reviewed are implemented by them also in order to keep all of our kids and staff safe. I would at this point open it up to any questions that we might have from board members first, and then I'll open it to the public. I know 4 of the board members were on the committee, and I know others have had questions that they've shared with the superintendent who has answered them. And if there are no questions from board members.
I have some.
All right, Dave Modrak has his hand up.
Who?
Dave Modrak.
Dave Modrak, please.
Hey, real quick, you mentioned that outside groups will not be using the facilities. Does that include the rec department over at Town Hall?
Yes.
Okay.
We're talking about inside the building, yes.
They are using the fields.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have a couple.
Mr. Palmer?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't see anything in the plan as to how we're going to administer education in the instrumental and vocal ensemble classes. Do we have any ideas about that? I also know Arts Ed NJ just put out, I think, 100-something page brochure today with recommendations. I was just wondering if any of those are going to be incorporated or if we have a plan.
Well, Mike, the plan doesn't include specific information about instruction in any of our academic areas, whether it be world language or science or music. I'm working with Mr. Fleischman to go over those parameters, and that information will be shared with the music faculty and with the building principal as soon as we have finalized that information.
Okay. Second, you talked about within the plan, it said only at the end of the marking period can you go from in-person to virtual or vice versa. And I can understand you can say you have to wait till the end of the marking period to go from virtual to in-person. The other way around, in-person to virtual, telling somebody you have to wait until the end of the marking period, how do we possibly enforce that? I mean, if somebody says, I've been in class for 3 days, I don't feel safe, I don't feel the social distancing, I just don't feel comfortable doing this, you gotta tell them, sorry, you have to wait till the end of the marking period?
Well, the plan does state that those cases can be reviewed on an individual basis, case-by-case basis. I encourage people, if you have concerns, if you are apprehensive, choose the full-time remote option. The problem is not so great at the middle and high school level because those students are following the same schedule with the same teachers, whether they're in person or full-time remote. The problem exists at the elementary level where we have separate classes set up for full-time remote. So to have the administrative logistics of having students kind of float back and forth freeform is hugely problematic. And the state does allow us to establish those timeframes, and we have decided that that is the most efficient way of having us handle that.
But I mean, I'm just saying, what do you do when the parent says, I'm not sending my kid in? Or you say you have to, and then the next day you say, hey, guess what, Dr. Rovtar, we took a trip to Rhode Island yesterday. I guess we have to quarantine for 2 weeks. What are you going to do about it?
Well, that's a different question, Mike. Quarantining is a different question. quarantining, it's just like, you know, any illness. And again, this really is focused at the elementary level, because if a kid is not able to attend at the high school or middle school, they're still in the same class. They're just not in a seat. They're at home. At the elementary level, you know, those classes, it's just as if a child were to be sick, that, you know, they're out of school and the teachers will work with them. They'll provide work to them during that quarantine period.
May I address that question?
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. O'Brien.
I understand, Mike, your concern. And that item came up, and I don't have my minutes with me, but it came up, I think, in the reopening committee, and I know it came up in the safety and security, which covers health committee also. And what we came up with is that Dr. Rovtar and the reopening committee has worded that section in such a way that it would address your concern. And I believe that the term that came up is for a student who wants to get out of the school, it would be the good judgment on the part of the administration to make that possible. I believe that was, the term is not written in there, but it was good judgment, and it's putting some faith in our administration to make a good faith judgment about the student who needs to get out. So that was addressed and talked about to some extent, and others have had your same concern. Thank you.
Karen has her hand up.
Go ahead, Karen. What did you see again?
I've got everybody.
Oh, Karen?
Okay, thank you. So I was very grateful to be able to serve on the committee, and and I fully support the reopening plan. There was really a very deep sense of commitment on the part of the committee members to get what is really an impossible task right. The committee remained flexible as new ideas came to the fore. And my sense was top of mind among the committee members was always the health and safety of the students and the staff. In particular, thanks certainly go to the teachers, administrators, school nurses, Dr. Rayberg, parents, and of course, Dr. Rovtar and Katine. You know, in particular, the teachers and administrators who are really being asked to do tasks that they could have not have imagined just a few short months ago. I also want to thank the CIT committee as well as the Safety and Security Committee. You know, reading through the minutes that you provided to the board members, it's clear that you helped to further refine the reopening plan by your questions. So I just really want to you know, thank everyone. And I did have one question, Charlie, if you don't mind. In Katine's update to us on July 31st, she provided a list of costs that, you know, unfortunately the school district will need to bear, that they were unanticipated costs. And if I'm not incorrect, it looks like they're totaling a little over $1 million. Is that correct, Katine?
That is correct.
Okay, I appreciate you providing that to us. I think it's an important element. Thank you.
In fact, tonight, or rather this morning, we do have an addendum, section K, where we're approving the expenditure of $460,000 for the ionization filters that Dr. Rovtar spoke about putting in each of the classrooms to help us with the air ventilation. So that would be the one addendum we have for this morning's meeting. But I agree with what Karen has said and Mike, and the whole thing again is they've done a lot with very little direction from the state. As I mentioned, I keep mentioning it is fluid, and I'm sure areas will pop up that nobody has thought of, and I have confidence that they will be addressed by the board, by the administration, and notification to the board and the parents. Any other board members? Okay, I don't see hands up. Any hands up? All right. We'll now open it up to the public. Please identify by your name, and also if you could help us with which school your youngster may be attending.
All right, so let me, before we start calling on folks to speak, if you are in the YouTube, if you're watching us on YouTube, you may want to look at the directions at the bottom of the page and come over and join us in the Zoom webinar. If you're in the Zoom webinar and you would like to make a comment or raise a question, just please click the raise your hand button and we will work through and recognize everybody. So I'm going to start off with Swarna Chatterjee. You have the floor.
Hi, Swarna Chatterjee. My kids go to Hilldale. My question is, if a student in a class tests positive, what is the process or procedure that's going to be implemented for the other students in that class?
Okay, at the elementary level, we believe that notification would take place. That would be done by the Board of Health. If the class most likely would need to be quarantined for 14 days, that class would then shift to full-time remote with the teacher working with the students while they are all quarantined for that period of time. And then presumably at the end of the quarantine period, that class would return to in-person learning.
All right, great. Thank you. I guess just the other question that I have is, if you mentioned we think our kids are sick and we don't send them to school, that day, is there like a virtual education process or experience for them, or what happens if we keep them at home so they can have an experience for education?
Yeah, at the elementary level, we are not set up to do that synchronous live stream from the classroom. So it would be the same as if the child, previous to the pandemic was sick, that, assignments would be available and they would, complete them. But we are not set up to do live streaming on a daily basis at the elementary level.
All right, thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Rolskin Laptop, if I said that right.
Hi there. Why are the elementary schools not set up to do the live streaming? The only option that you're giving the children then is that if they have to, they get separated from their classes. So the kids who've been together for several years now, the ones who are not going to be in class are suddenly part of some larger virtual class over the entire school district. I don't understand why the elementary schools are not set up for live streaming, especially for situations like was mentioned, if the class has to get quarantined as a whole, or even if a child within that class has to get quarantined. You're wind up separating all of these children. If you can live stream for the junior and the senior high schools, why can you not do that for the elementary?
It's for the elementary level, and we did have some discussions about this, some very long discussions about this. It's not a question of the technology. It's a question of the attention span and the ability of the teacher to really effectively work with students who are in class and also at home at the same time. Whether the distractions of, the audio and the video at home, we just did not feel that was a best case scenario for either the child at home or the children in the classroom. And in terms of the district-wide classes, that's really our only option from an efficiency standpoint, because if I have 5 students at each one of the elementary schools opting out in 5th grade, I am not going to create 5 separate remote classes, each having 5 students in them. So we will be grouping kids across the district. We'll have a class of 25. It's not ideal, but most of the circumstances that we're dealing with regard to the pandemic are not ideal. That we feel that that's our best approach at this point.
And what happens if those children decide to transition back into the classroom in the next marking period? Here they've been with a different teacher,
they've had hopefully the same curriculum, but a different style of teaching. Everybody has a different style. They've had different interactions with different children. What happens in that situation?
I like to think that our elementary kids are pretty resilient and pretty adaptable. It's certainly, again, not anything that anyone would choose, but I think based on what I've seen that students at the elementary level are pretty adaptable, and I think that they can adjust to that type of situation.
Especially at the younger ages where the social part is such an important part, it becomes much more difficult, not easier.
Okay. Did you have another question or?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
going to move to AA.
Good morning, everyone. I have 2 kids in Valley View, and
Could you tell us your name, please?
my name is Afshin, and I have 2 kids in Valley View School. I'm just wondering, why can we not have the same model for the elementary school kids like we have for middle school and high school, where the kids are going to school in groups for 2 days, so that way there's not that many students in school at the same time? Because I feel like if majority of the students, as been mentioned right now, are attending elementary school, the schools are crowded as it is.
We really feel that at the elementary level, the more in-person time that we can have for our students is better. So that is why we created the model to have those elementary age students in school 4 days a week. And again, if parents are concerned about having their children attend in person, we do offer the full-time remote option.
I think also, if I may, this was the recommendation of the school principals at the elementary level also. We also have an assistant superintendent for curriculum. This was part of her recommendation also. So these are the people working with these little guys in the elementaries, and this is the system that they've come up with along with Dr. Rovtar, and that's why it's being recommended. So it wasn't just Dr. Rovtar deciding this. This was a committee working with the elementary principals and the curriculum, or the assistant superintendent for curriculum. I just wanted to add that.
Okay, thank you.
Next.
But are they ensuring that there will be like social distancing with that many students in the school?
Yes, we believe that we can social distance anywhere between 3 and 6 feet.
Okay, and the screening, the temperature check has to be done at home, and it won't be monitored in school?
Yes, that's correct. The screening is done at home.
You're getting more information on that.
And that information is detailed in the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Elise Care.
Next.
Elise, can you hear us?
Oh, I cannot hear you.
Oh, we can hear you, but you have to speak up a little bit.
Yeah. We cannot hear you, Elise.
Does Elise know she's on mute?
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you.
Now we got
Okay,
you.
I do have a few questions, one of which I guess just popped up when there was a question about the vocal music and instrumental classes. I'm not sure that I, as a parent, am comfortable not knowing how those classrooms would be conducted and what precautions would be taken if you take a look at some of the information in the literature about exhaling and inhaling, particularly vocal music and instrumental with the winds and all of that. So I'm kind of wanting to have more information of that before, as a parent, I make that decision as to whether or not my child is going to participate.
As I said, we are working with the guidelines that have come to us through the Music Teachers Association. A lot of what will happen in those classes will really be theory-based music appreciation. We are not intending to have a lot of singing go on, a lot of playing go on in person. Some of that instrumental work can go on virtually with the teachers working with the students just as they did in the spring.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. In terms of the system of temperature checks, is there going to be some kind of application or some kind of confirmation code if a parent or say just forgets for the morning? Will there be some kind of code that says, yes, this child's temperature was checked before they get on the bus and before they enter the school building? How is that going to be monitored?
There will be an application, a cell phone application that parents will have to complete, and we will have a cutoff time. We'll share all that information with parents at the end of the summer. Parents will have to complete that for each child, or the child will be flagged, and the nurses will be following up when that child arrives at school. The bus drivers will not have that information. So if the screening hasn't been completed by the time the child gets on the bus, we can't control that. But if they get to school and the screening has not been completed, we will be dealing with that immediately.
Okay. When it comes to absences, if a student or a staff person has to stay home due to either symptoms or a temperature check, how are rules of absences going to be adjusted? Number one, for the students in terms of how many they're allowed, particularly I have a high schooler, as well as for teachers and use of sick days and sick time.
We recognize that the current situation provides a situation where we have to be a little bit more flexible and have to adjust how we account for those things. The high school information about absences will be coming out from the building principal, but we do recognize that, particularly with long quarantine periods that might occur, that we are going to have to be flexible in terms of how attendance is counted, particularly at the high school, because the students have the ability to, if you're quarantining, if you're well and you're just quarantining, there's no reason why a student cannot participate in class every day. So, that certainly, helps in terms of, missing instruction. But we do recognize the need for flexibility this year, and we'll address that.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the
one more question of it.
Yeah,
okay?
sure. Yes.
Then we got to move on.
In terms of the switching of classes and the disinfecting, when students are switching at the middle school level and the high school level, is there going to be the opportunity, or who will be disinfecting the seats, the desks, the chairs in between the switches of classes?
Students can wipe them down. We do not have the staff to be able to disinfect every classroom after every class.
And will there be any kind of equipment or disinfectant wipes available for the students to do that, or are you suggesting that they bring their own?
No, we will have supplies available in the classroom.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something, okay?
Yep, go ahead.
If you were trying to join from YouTube and you got a message that you weren't allowed to enter, we've added more capacity. You should be able to join now.
Thank you, Austin. Marina.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My kids are at Woodmont Elementary. My name is Marina Belov. I have a question about online classes. Based on what criteria did you choose teachers for online classes?
We have not actually made those selections yet. We are currently working with our staff members who may be, for their own reasons, choosing or requesting to work remotely. So we will be working with that and then, selecting other staff to fill in those remote teaching assignments. We have not made those selections yet.
Okay, and I understand when, if they go online, if kids go online and then we decide to send them to school, they will have a different teacher at that time, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And as far as contact tracing, that's my last question. Will we receive anything from Board of Health as far as how this is going to happen?
No. If your child has somehow been exposed, they will call you to make that notification, but they're not going to. There's no overall procedures that the Department of Health is releasing. They will simply make a direct contact to anyone that has been exposed that needs to either go for a test or be quarantined.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Mrs. Richarski?
Hello?
You're muted, Mrs. Richarski.
Oh, there you go. Is that better? Hello?
Better.
Okay, thanks very much. I wanted to say thank you. I have a high schooler for the vice principal who sent out the schedule daily last year. That was wonderful. And I also wanted to know, you talked about if someone's not feeling well to stay home. So typically as we enter fall and winter, you get a little cold or you get a cough or you have allergies, nothing that would under normal circumstances stop you from going to school, but everybody's got a heightened awareness of germs. So in that case, would the high schooler be able to say, I'm not physically going in today, but I don't want to be marked absent. I'll stay at home and be virtual to keep everybody safe. And what is that process?
I believe that they would, if they're scheduled to be in person that day, that they would report themselves as being absent, but still attend virtually.
So why would you report yourself absent if you're still going to attend? I mean, I'm a little confused there. You're really not, I mean, listen, take for example, a young lady who has cramps one day. Typically, a parent would throw Motrin at them and send them to school. And, I'm just sensitive to the awareness of the spreading of germs. If the child would be perfectly fine to be virtual, but they just don't want to spread germs, even though they're not positive, why would they be marked absent?
Well, my comment was based on the fact that there was some level of illness and that there was a potential that the child may not be able to fully participate in all the classes. And unless we know that there's an illness and they don't show up, then they're definitely marked absent.
I hear you, but what I think you're opening the door for is lots of kids being absent for no reason, because everybody nowadays has a real heightened awareness to spreading germs. And if my child sneezes a few times because she has allergies and she goes to school, even with her mask on, the teacher's not going to appreciate that. The people in the school are not going to appreciate that. And there's be nothing wrong. So, I just would like you to address that. And I don't see, whatever the answer is, it is.
We'll get some clarification on that for you, and we'll send that information out.
Yes, that's
Thank
really,
you.
No, I have a few more. Don't cut me off, sir.
No. You're going to have two more, okay? We have a lot of people waiting, all right?
There's not too many.
No.
Has there been any creativity in terms of thinking that why don't we, since these are challenges primarily for elementary students, why aren't we closing the high school, letting everybody in high school be virtual, and maybe even Lazar, so we can truly social distance elementary students?
I would encourage folks to take a look at the question and answer document that's posted on the district website. It addresses your question. I have received that from a number of parents. At the present time, we are obligated to provide in-person instruction at every grade level. So we cannot opt to close the high school or any school. We have to provide in-person instruction at all grade levels.
Okay. And one last question then, since I'm being cut down here, cut off, I should say. Are you still dropping classes in the high school level as you do for AM and PM, since they're only going to be in school for 4 days?
Again, Mrs. Petrowski, I know you said that I don't know if you've looked at the plan. It's a long one, but included in the plan is the schedule for the high school. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. It shows, how the days will work at the high school.
Okay, I did see that actually. I just truly didn't understand the presentation of it. So I know the classes are going to be short and scheduled.
Promise that was your last. Promise that was your last question.
Okay.
I'll give you one more now because I'm nice.
Let it go.
Oh, thank you, sir. If the students are going to have to wipe their own desks and chairs down, I can't remember if I read in the document that the classes were going to be shortened periods, because if they're going to have to wipe their own desks and chairs down, that just makes it even a shorter period by the time any teaching actually happens.
Again, the full schedule at the high school level is included in the plan, so you can see the length of the class period.
Got to read that plan, okay?
Okay, I did.
Thanks so much.
Very big.
Have a great day. Next.
Christopher Reynolds.
Austin. How many more?
You can see the whole line. There's many, many questions. Mr. Reynolds, you are muted.
More than I can count.
Sorry about that. You can hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. My children are in William Mason. Just two questions, and I want to say thank you for having this meeting and letting us ask questions. The first question I have is, we're seeing other school districts around the country that have opened up. Specifically, I'm thinking of Georgia at this moment, but I know there are other stores as well. One of the school districts has recently had, I think, 250 people quarantined within the first week of opening. I know you're doing your best to have a plan where that doesn't happen. Is there, I guess the question is, what are we learning, or what steps are you taking to make sure you're learning from I won't say the mistakes, but the challenges that other school districts are having as they're opening back up?
We believe our plan provides a safe environment to the extent that we can provide that. Again, we await further direction from the governor. With regard to whether schools can actually open for in-person instruction. He has told us to this point that we are required to do that, and we are complying with that.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question was just a clarification from the first gentleman. You had said related to quarantine, and I just want to make sure that I heard this correctly. If a child has to quarantine either because of their own, they were exposed, or if the entire class is needs to quarantine, did I hear correctly that there'll be no classwork, no online or virtual option for children during that 14-day quarantine period? That's what you said?
At the elementary level, if the whole class is required to quarantine, then the instruction for that class with that teacher will shift to full-time remote during the period of quarantine.
Okay, but if it's an individual circumstance where child went on vacation or they were exposed through some other aspect other than school and had to quarantine, there would be no virtual option for them?
Some of it may occur, that may happen on a class-by-class basis, but our model at the elementary level does not provide for that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom Radcliffe.
Hello?
Mr. Radcliffe, you're muted. Mr. Radcliffe, we can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself? Okay, I'm going to pass over you. We have a number of questions. So, Chicharelli?
Their version of Zoom is too old.
I'm sorry?
Their version of Zoom is too old.
Well, the message that we're getting for some of you is that your version of Zoom is too old and that will not allow us to bring you in and actually hear your comments. So I'm going to move on to Jennifer Bain.
Am I on?
Yes,
Yes, you are.
Good morning. How are you? Thank you. My name is Jennifer Bain. I have 3 kiddos, 2 of which are at Cedar Hill. I have 1 comment and 3 questions. So my comment is in the hospital, we do the same screening app every day. We get a 24-hour clearance to show it. And then we basically just show our cell phone showing a green pass every time we go through the hospital. You could consider having, especially for the elementary schools, you put on the pass, it gives you a green light. Before the child enters the bus driver says, okay, they're green, they can get on. Just a comment. Anyway, for my second question, for elementary schools, are you going to be providing any mask breaks for the kids or any snack breaks for the kids, even though they're in the classroom?
We're working on the logistics of snacks. We understand that the students do need that. So, the principals are working on that, how that will work in their buildings, and they will be communicating that information out to parents. Mask breaks, I believe that the governor said are not allowed.
Okay.
So
I'm not
we
sure.
await,
Okay. And then I think one question would be, if the governor does say you are allowed to go 100% virtual, is Montville Township planning on going 100% virtual, or you're not sure yet?
I don't think we're there yet, but
Okay.
at the end of the meeting when we pass resolutions, okay?
Okay.
Again, right now,
if it's a matter of local choice, we would have to convene a meeting of the Board of Education to make that decision.
Okay.
and we would want to hear from the parents again, okay?
Thank you. And then I guess one of my biggest concerns is you've really done
You promised this is your last question now.
Oh, this is my real question, actually. I think you've done a really good job about cleaning and making sure that all the health guidelines are being taken into account. My question is more about the educational perspective, right? So you had mentioned in the full handout about pacing for the virtual component, and somebody did allude to if you're going back and forth between virtual and in person. My question though is, even for the in-person, I have 2 daughters who are in the same grade, and even within those 2 classes in the same grade, there was really a pretty huge discrepancy in the content matter that was being presented to the children. So how are we as a community going to be assuring that this is an effective educational year, and really make sure that we're pacing our children appropriately within the schools, who, regardless, as we're going to be very fluid going back and forth for in-person and virtual. And that's it. Thank you.
Well, when we were thrown into distance learning in March, first of all, we didn't even know how long it would last. When we went out, it was initially 2 weeks, and then we hung on until some point, I guess in May, when the governor said, you're not going back at all. That's a very different circumstance. We were not really able to plan for that, but we have planned for this. And that is why we do have the pacing guides that all of the teachers, whether they're in person or remote, will be following. So I believe we're in a much better position in terms of having all of the teachers, move through the curriculum effectively. That's not to say that every teacher is going to, have the same lesson as every other teacher at a grade level. That shouldn't happen. But I do believe that the pacing guides will give us greater continuity and put us in a much better situation.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on to Stacy Overfield.
Hello?
Can
Stacey?
you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. My daughter is going to be in 5th grade at Valley View in one of the LLD classes. I know that Dr. Rovchar, I had sent you an email a week or so ago regarding what the situation is going to be for those LLD classes. I know you said that they were working on some last minute details, but it's almost the middle of August, and I'm a full-time working single parent and have no place for my daughter to be, so I need to work out arrangements for her if she's only going to be in school for a half day. But certainly the needs of these children are so far greater than the mainstream children. And there's certainly accommodation and room in the classrooms, given that these class sizes are so small, for appropriate distancing and safe learning in the classroom. And I'm sort of hearing that that's kind of the consensus among the parents who have kids in those classes. But just for myself, speaking for myself, I would just like to know if you have any additional information on the LLD classes specifically.
I do not have anything more. I will ask Mrs. Desai to provide that information, and we can share that.
Okay?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
She will be in touch with you. If she doesn't get in touch, just call the superintendent. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Or the principal of the school. All right? Thank you very much.
Evan McKelvey? Evan, you're muted.
Hi, Evan McKelvey. My child is going to kindergarten.
Please speak up, Evan. Speak up.
Sorry, is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. My child is going to Cedar Hill Kindergarten, or supposedly would go there. My question is, so that for the virtual learning for elementary school, it's supposed to be done in the afternoon, correct?
No, virtual learning, are we talking about full-time remote learning if your child is not in school?
Full-time remote for elementary, not in school.
Full-time remote for elementary will follow the same schedule as in-person. That will take place in the morning.
Okay. All right. I think there was a conflict on that one when we were reading about it. That makes us feel a little bit better. Another question would be, I understand that you guys are not making the notifications to parents if there is a positive. Do we know if DOH would be making the notification before the next school day? And if someone doesn't pass their morning test before they go in, or notifies the school directly that they have a positive case or presumptive positive case, will the school just provide that information to the Department of Health, or will they make notification to the parents? Hey, there's a strong possibility somebody has COVID. You should not be coming to school.
Okay. Let me see if I can answer all the parts of that. In terms of the Department of Health, I am not them, so I cannot speak for the timing of their notification process. It will happen when it happens. If a child reports to us that they are COVID positive or a staff member, we will certainly share that information with the Department of Health, but we are not permitted to make notification to parents, if a child in a classroom is positive. That has to come from the Department of Health.
Okay, so it's obviously legal. For the apps and sites that virtual learning would use, how soon would we be able to get that to start teaching our kids and ourselves how to utilize that? And would you be doing any virtual tour videos of what has been set up within the schools before they open?
I'm not sure how early we can provide that information. You can access some of the tutorial information online. We use Schoology and Seesaw at the elementary level. And I know that there are informational videos for both of those platforms available online. And I would encourage parents to take a look at that before you are provided with your sign-on information.
Okay. And
I would also encourage everybody that if you have questions about anything in your school, you have a principal in the school that's available feel free to contact him or her. You don't have to wait to get to Dr. Rovtar, because they have a lot of this information. They were on the committee. They're aware. They have faculty, the administrative meetings. So that might be a little quicker thing for you to do. But I'm going to allow one more question, sir. We got to move on.
Okay, yeah, no,
We got a few people yet. I want to be fair.
If a child contracts COVID from a school and then dies, will you close the schools and go virtual until further notice?
I didn't understand the question.
If
a child dies.
I don't even want to.
The school. I
That's.
I don't even know how to
It's a
react to
reality.
that.
I don't either.
I'm sorry. The only reason I bring all these up here and not to a principal is so other people can hear these questions because they're not clear. That's it. And I'm done. Okay.
All of our decisions about closing school are going to be informed by the Department of Health. They will certainly inform us in terms of the level of virus spread in the community, and the governor and the Department of Education.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move on to Caroline Bucci.
Hi, good morning. My name is Caroline.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for taking the time to ask questions. My son is going to be attending Cedar Hill. I did just have a question regarding the mask breaks. I know that there can't be any in the building. I wasn't sure if there have been plans for all the schools to rent tents like other districts are doing, and then having a snack break and a mask break outside under a tent. So that way it doesn't have to be when weather permits.
We have not contemplated doing that. I mean, we do have some outdoor classrooms at some of our schools. Obviously, we have playgrounds. I mean, weather permitting, students can certainly be taken outside by the teacher, but at this point, we do not have any plans to acquire tents.
Okay, thank you. It was something that I saw multiple school districts propose. And I do think that it would be great for kids to have that break, especially for the social emotional piece that's going to be going on, especially in the elementary school and the elementary schools at this time, to be able to have a break, have a snack, take a break from the mask, and just get outside. So I did think it was a great idea. I just wanted to propose it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Andrea Wattel.
Hi, how are you? Good morning. Thank you for taking
Morning.
questions. I have two sons in Valley View, and I was just curious as to, with all these safety measures that are being put in place and everybody's doing a great job, what are or have we been given any guideline as to when we lift them, if numbers continue to go down, or what's the guideline for moving things even more into the direction of the new normal?
I think our primary guidance on that would be where the state is in terms of moving through the phases. Currently, we are paused in phase 2. When the state as a whole gets to phase 4, I think that would be the time where we might be able to have discussion and consideration about, an adjustment to the plan.
Okay. I just curious, like I said, everything has to come in stages. I understand, and you guys are doing a great job, and we're so appreciative that we're even able to try and go back.
Okay, Marissa.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi. I had a question. I emailed Mrs. Desai about special education. My son is in Hilldale, and she actually told me that she couldn't answer my questions to ask them here. But given everything I've heard, I don't know if this is the right format or forum. In terms of his IEP and things like that, when am I going to get information on that? Again, she told me to ask my questions here.
Information about About what aspect of the IEP?
About how his IEP will be satisfied in terms of he's supposed to get an aid, in terms of how that'll work with social distancing, if he's going to be getting pulled out, things like that. Again, I emailed her all my questions ahead of time, and she told me to ask all my questions here. I just don't know if this is the proper forum.
I think that's a personal thing.
Yeah, we can certainly work with you on that individually.
Okay, great.
Our intent is to, as fully as we can manage to comply with the terms of each student's IEP, our intention is to do that.
Right, given that the IEP is a legal document, again, I assumed Rebecca would have the information for me, and she told me to ask my questions here, which I really wasn't comfortable with given the public forum.
I agree with you. Yeah, I would hope that it would be addressed with her.
And she told me to ask them here.
Well, I don't know why, because
we will get an answer for you.
Great, thank you. I'll forward the email to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm moving on to Jinx Spam.
Hi, my name is Hannah, and I have a first grader in William Mason and a preschooler in Cedar Hill. My question is in regards to social distancing in the younger children. If a younger child is crying, they miss mommy, their shoes untied, they're scared by a fire drill, like any of those type of situations, would the teacher be discouraged or encouraged from having physical contact with that child? Would they, be allowed to give them a hug? Would they be allowed to say, come sit right next to me, to calm them down? Is that the teacher's decision? Is that like who kind of makes that call?
Unfortunately, and it pains me as an educator to say this, but we are not encouraging any of our staff members to have any kind of physical contact with our students at the present time. So as much as that's our general inclination to want to do those things, we simply cannot.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, you cut out just a little bit in the beginning there. It's going to be discouraged. Is that correct?
We cannot allow teachers to have physical contact with students.
No matter what level.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you all are doing.
Thank you. Next, Amit. Amit?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
A little louder, please. Speak up.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, the first marking date, when does that end? I was trying to find that information. I could not find it, so I thought I'd ask you.
I believe it's right around the start of November, typically, at the middle and high school level, and a little bit later at the elementary level. I don't know, Andrea, do you know off the top of your head?
Andrea?
The trimester ends somewhere around the second week of December.
Second week of December.
Okay.
For
Thank
the
you.
elementary level.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Helena.
Hello. Yeah, one of my children will be entering Woodmont kindergarten. The other one will be also going to Woodmont. My question is, I guess, similar to regarding special education as well, except I'm wondering what the option is for a child who has an IEP, and if I choose to do remote learning, what that would look like. Would they have, is there something in place where it would be like there would be one-on-one meetings for that child if they were to be doing it virtually?
That's certainly a possibility, and we might get some further detail on that from the Mrs. Desai. Again, with the special ed accommodations, I mean, we really have to deal with those on a case-by-case basis, and not knowing specifically what your child's needs are, it's difficult to really respond to your question.
Right. So then my other question is, because I did reach out to like the case manager and everything, and I still have not gotten word about that. And so we're obviously have a time frame where have to make a decision about this option, whether to do remote learning for maybe just one child, like, the child who has the IEP versus the other child. And I feel like being able to make that decision by the 12th without having this plan of what it's going to look like virtually for him, it's pretty hard to make that decision at this point in time when no one's giving me any information. So, yeah.
If you haven't heard directly from the case manager, I would ask you to send an email or call Mrs. Desai directly.
Okay, but like I heard somebody else say that they reached out to her and she seemed to not have any answers. So if there is a situation, since we're on a time crunch right now where we have till the 12th and I don't get any information, she doesn't give me a plan of what this remote learning option could look like for him, I can't make a decision not knowing what his education is going to look like being home versus being in school. I don't have either option. I mean, I don't have either information. So do I get do people in the special education who don't have this detailed like regular education have more of a time frame then besides the 12th? Because that doesn't seem fair,
Well, at this point, I cannot extend the timeline because we need that information to make determinations. But certainly, if there are situations like yours that revolve around an IEP and there's missing information, we can certainly deal with that on a case-by-case basis.
So what
I think also that if you don't get a response from special services, our assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum, Andrea, reach out to her too, because I know she's part of her supervisor. So, but you are right. It's very frustrating and you should get some answers. Okay. But follow through with those. Okay.
Right. I like I said, I did reach out, but I still haven't heard anything. Yeah. So, I just
follow through with both of those people that were mentioned. Okay.
So do I reach out to Renee Rovtar if by the 12th I don't have anybody reaching back out to me? If I reach out to Andrea and she can't give me that plan to make that decision, I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
well, they're both Mrs. Sayer supervisors,
right?
So that's why I'm suggesting them. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Melissa Adasic.
We're going to hear a couple more questions, and then we're going to do the agenda, and then we'll come back to answer more questions. Okay. 2 more people, and then we'll do the agenda.
Hello?
Melissa Adasic?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, great. So what is it going to look like at the high school for labs? I think it said it was going to be in the afternoon, but does that mean virtually at home, or you got to bring them back after lunch? I was unclear.
Oh, no. No one comes back to school after lunch. But the science labs, one of 2 things will happen. Either the lab activity will take place while the students are in school, and then some additional instruction will take place in the virtual component in the afternoon to make up for the lost classroom time, or vice versa. The teachers are still working on that, but we recognize that the lab period is usually an expanded period during the school day that attaches to lunch, and without lunch, we lose that time. So we're trying to make a provision to make sure that we are able to provide that lab experience for the students that are taking the lab sciences. The logistics of that, we're still working out.
Okay. What was I going to say? Will it all be face-to-face? Like last year at the end of the year, she was in the middle school, and I think only one teacher required face-to-face learning. The rest was all just work sent to them. So will it be all, virtual, actual face-to-face with the teacher learning?
Yeah, at the middle and high school level, yes. And, there are a couple of other provisions in there that students are going to hold the students a little bit more accountable too. The students cannot block their cameras. We need to see the students, and we need to see them participating in the classes.
That's fine. Yeah, no, it just wasn't even an option. Okay, and last thing, you said that there's going to be no locker room. So I'm assuming that means they're not changing for gym?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for answering my
And
questions.
the gym classes are going to have some alternative activities as well. More focused on health, and, other instruction, that is not of, the purely physical education. It's physical education and health. That's what that curriculum is. So,
Right.
The actual physical part of it will probably be, more minimal during the beginning part of the year.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you so much.
All right, we're gonna have one more, then we'll go to the agenda, then we'll come back, okay?
Jessica Pena?
Yes, hi, can you hear me? Good morning, and thank you for taking my question. My son is transitioning from a small private school to Woodmont in second grade. And a big part of the reason was his social emotional well-being. So this makes it extremely tricky. We also, part of the year, live in a multi-generational family. So taking all things into consideration, it's a tough decision. So I was wondering, in terms of the virtual option, I was reading the plan. I know you mentioned the schedule will be the same for elementary, which I guess would be 8:10 to 12:40. How much of that would be in person, like face-to-face?
For the virtual students, for the full-time remote, we are expecting that a large part of that will be in-person instruction. What the teachers may do, just as would take place when you're in a classroom, the learning platforms allows for them to send students to a breakout room for a small group discussion. So they may place students in there just as you would in a classroom, a group of kids have some discussion and then come back to the full class. But we are expecting pretty full engagement during the morning session at the elementary level.
Okay, great. That was actually going to be part of my question. I'm a teacher myself, and I was going to ask about breaking them into smaller groups. And is there, being my son, as a parent, obviously, I'm kind of nervous about this being social emotional. I wanted more socialization for him. So keeping him home is definitely is not going in the right direction, but we may have to. Is there any option or thought about possibly having like a meet and greet for kids that are doing virtual, and now hearing that it might be across district for kids that don't know each other, maybe outdoors, something just so that they have some actual, can meet their teacher and meet some other students?
At the present time, that's not something that we are planning.
Okay. Okay. And do you know if is there still a new student screening in place that?
Andrew.
If the child has already registered for school, the school should be reaching out to them with that information.
Okay, I haven't as of yet, but I'll contact them directly. And then the last.
And
I'm sorry?
Feel free to call the principal with these questions also.
Okay, will do. Thank you. And the last thing, you had mentioned that you're following the guidelines for athletics. Do you know what that is? I haven't read those. Will there be any for elementary kind of recreational sports program?
We don't offer any. That would be through the Township Recreation Department. We don't offer anything at the elementary or middle school level. We just have the high school athletics.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for taking my questions.
You're very welcome. As I mentioned a few moments ago, I see we still have several callers.
Quite a number of questions.
But what we're looking for, we have an agenda, and we've done this same procedure when we've had other meetings of this nature. I'd like to go back. We finished Dr. Rovkar's presentation. I'd now like to go back to the motion items listed on the agenda. Section I, there's no motion for Section I. J1 is the main reason why we're here this morning, and I'd like to take these separately. We'll take J and K, each of the letters separately. So I would entertain a motion for J1 as listed on the agenda.
Recognition.
That was a motion by,
Recognition.
Oh, Mike O'Brien.
I'm seeking
Mike O'Brien wants
recognition.
Yeah, can you call on him, Charlie? I can't see the whole.
I can't see anything. Who spoke up?
Mike O'Brien.
I'm seeking.
You had a
recognition.
question? Go ahead, Mr. O'Brien.
Be recognized.
Okay, at this time on the agenda, I move, if there's a second, to make an amendment to today's agenda. The amendment I am proposing would become J2. J2 would read as follows. Resolved that the Montville Township Board of Education supports legislative or executive action to delay the restart of in-person public education for the months of September and October 2020 and utilize virtual education. And I seek a second.
No, well, there'll be no second at this time, Mr. O'Brien, because we're going to do J1 first. After J1, then we'll come back and do J2, all right? So if we could have a motion on J1 in a second, then we'll vote on that, and then we'll come back to Mr. O'Brien's motion for J2. So may I have a motion on J1?
Move on J1. Move on J1. And second, I'll second it, Charlie. It's Michelle.
All right, the motion is second by Karen and Michelle. Any questions on J1? All right, Katine, could you do a roll call, please? On
Dr.
J1.
Cordolino,
Yes.
Mrs. Zuckerman,
Yes.
Mr. Daughtry,
Yes.
Mrs. Fano,
Yes.
Dr. Modrak,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Point of order. For the reasons that I gave to our attorney earlier on in closed session, I am unable to vote on J1 until there's resolution on the amendment. That becomes a priority in parliamentary procedure, and I'm going to do that. I cannot vote on it until there's a clarification of the motion. I think there's a question of order on I would like to not challenge, but nicely challenge. There is a point of order here.
I will finish the roll call and then we'll come back. Continue, Mrs. Lunt.
Mr. Rappaport,
Yes.
Mr. Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Grau.
Yes. Mr. Edelstein, Mr. O'Brien had a J2. He indicates that we were out of order in J1. Would you like to comment?
Yes. J2 is certainly something the board will take up, but J1, which is the in-person school reopening plan, is what is required by the state of New Jersey and the Department of Education. So the board would be in violation of the law if it did not pass such a plan. That does not mean that reasonable people, including many individuals and groups and public officials, think differently and think that the schools should not open in person in September. And a number of school districts have expressed that thought, but still, nonetheless, are required to pass the in-person plan. I believe that Mr. O'Brien's resolution properly addresses the larger issue of whether schools should open now and would be an appropriate expression of the board's position to the state should that resolution pass. So it's an appropriate resolution, but it does not alter the...
We knew J2 is an appropriate resolution. Mike made some other comments that he doesn't want to vote on J1 until we vote on J2. Is that appropriate?
I don't believe it is. With all due respect to my friend, Mr. O'Brien, I don't think so.
And I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree by parliamentary procedure. I have that privilege to do so. All right, with all due respect to your background.
So the vote on J1 was 8-0, and Mr. O'Brien's comment, is that correct, Mrs. Slunt?
Correct.
All right, we now have a motion.
Mr. President, I think
Yes.
it would be, I think you would be within your discretion following the board action on J2. If Mr. O'Brien would then like to cast his vote on J1, since it is not going to affect the outcome of the resolution, I would urge you to permit him to do so.
That was going to be offered to him if he wanted to do that if J2 passes.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
J2, would you, Katine, can you reread that resolution, please?
I don't have it in front of me. I would refer to Mr. O'Brien to reread it.
Okay, I'll read it again.
Mike, can you read it again, please?
And I'll read a little slower. J2 would say, resolved that the Montville Township Board of Education supports legislative or executive action to delay the restart of in-person public education for the months of September and October 2020 and utilize virtual education. If I may speak to the amendment.
Before you speak, let's get a second.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Seconded by
Me, Mike.
Mama. Okay.
Okay, now I will speak.
Comments on the question?
I do.
Comments on the resolution? Discussion?
Yes. Hi, Charlie. It's me, Christine. I do have a comment.
Go ahead.
So I didn't see the resolution before our closed door meeting. So I quickly, between the two meetings, did some research. I know Mike referred to Jersey City, but there's something that's important is that when they had their Board of Education meeting and passed this resolution, they cited an increased cases of New Jersey. That was on Thursday. The very next day, Friday, Governor Murphy actually said the trends were heading in the right direction. The rate of transmission dropped and the testing positive dropped. So they passed the resolution based on information that I guess was the week prior, and not really actual real-time information from Governor Murphy. Another thing is that we are giving, also it's Jersey City, they're right next to New York City. They had a very bad outbreak. We're very different in Montville. We're in the suburbs. We only have 2 cases, weeks prior, none. Also, students, the administration has given the students the option to choose all remote, which is fabulous. And the staff also can choose options as well. And so I think for me, and from what I'm hearing from parents, all the kids really suffered academically and emotionally from being all remote. And some of the parents themselves, you know, suffered if they're working and so forth, or just being home, being homeschool teachers. And so for me, I would be voting against it.
Okay. Any other discussion?
We can't see all your hands, so if you want to speak, start speaking.
I'd like to say something. It's Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle, go ahead.
Okay. I first want to say that I echo what Karen said earlier, lauding the administration on the work that they did to come up with the plan that we just passed in J1. And I fully support our passage of that plan. I think that given the impossible task the committee and the administration was asked to undertake, given that we're required as of right now by the Department of Education to have a plan for in-person learning, I think as good as I could feel about any plan, recognizing that no plan right now is going to be perfect and there's pros and cons, I feel comfortable passing that. That being said, I also am going to support Mike's resolution. I really want to make sure the public understands this is not a resolution saying that Montville is making a decision to go all virtual. It's a resolution saying that we, as a board, feel that that's the safest way to open schools right now until we have more time to see what's happening in the state. I think that I have a lot of concerns. In my opinion, if we open schools and one person dies, that's too many. And so I don't see how, even with the best plan, we can be completely sure that that wouldn't happen given the situation in the world. This is my opinion, which is why I feel comfortable supporting Mike's resolution. And so I just think the other thing I did want to quick say is that I do feel very strongly that the work being done on the virtual education, whether it's in the hybrid model and some kids will be virtual and some in person, or for whatever reason we need to go all virtual, is greatly improved. The work the administration has put into that has been admirable. The teachers, I do feel like it will be a completely different experience than the spring, and I am grateful for that. Thank you.
Any other board members? We can't see your.
Yeah, it's Mike. Okay, may I?
Mike Palmer?
Yeah. Okay. First of all,
Mike Palmer?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I certainly appreciate everything Christine says. I understand all the problems that the children are having with remote learning, and every single thing she says I agree with, but it's just a matter of balancing educational needs with physical health. And at this point, I'm going to err on the side of physical health. I look at what we're doing in the state. We can't go to the gym. We can't do indoor dining. We can't do theater. We can't even go to church other than a handful of people. And yet somehow or other, we're expected to bring hundreds of people, both children and students, into a school and say that it's going to be safe. I think it's silly. If it were up to me, we wouldn't be opening the schools at all for anything other than remote learning at this time. I don't think it's safe for the students. I don't think it's safe for the teachers, but that's not my decision. I'm not the governor. And this isn't the same as the Jersey City thing. Jersey City, they actually voted to do all remote learning, I believe, in defiance of Governor Murphy. We're not going that far. We're just really putting in a recommendation. The recommendation being that for the time being, we go to all remote learning as the safe thing to do, and I support that.
Thank you, Mike. I think that's an important point you make with Jersey City, different than our resolution. Anybody else? Any other board member?
Mike Rappaport.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry, Mike, we can't see you go.
All right. Yeah, no, I can't support this particular resolution. I think it's very important that the students are in school. I have two children in school, and I can see from the spring semester the detriment, the mental, the physical, the academic, the social detriment of not being in school. And there is a huge physical component to that, where they're also suffering by not being in school. And I only wish that we could use this plan that this great plan's been put together, but increase it to 4 days in school for the middle school and high school. I think the kids would greatly benefit from that. I think that the physical, social, emotional, academic, that really would be important for them to be in school.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else?
Charlie?
I can't see. You got it.
Yeah, Charlie.
Karen, go ahead.
Just to make it clear that this resolution is, whether it passes or doesn't, is not a binding resolution. All it does is say that the Board of Education of Montville Township is supportive of legislation or executive action that would delay the opening of school. It does nothing more than that, unless something changes. School will be opening under the plan that we've already approved. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Speak to the
Thank you, Karen.
Michael Bryan.
Michael Bryan?
Yes, I just want to make clear about the amendment. First of all, I spent on 3 committees that had to do with the reopening plan, the curriculum committee, the safety and security committee, and of course the reopening committee itself. A lot of work went into this. So this resolution is not in any way, and the fact that I didn't vote on it is not in any way to besmirch the work of those committees. I think under the circumstances, this is a very good plan that we have. There's so much work and so much thought went into it. So that's not the point. There are currently legislation and consideration for keeping the schools closed. All we're doing is saying that we support that. I do understand the things that my colleagues have said about what students of that age, various ages, need, okay? But I'll remind you again, as I did in closed, okay? My experience working in public schools of 45 plus years is overwhelming compared to the other people on this board. Okay, I know what goes on in schools. I know what little kids, what goes on. There were questions brought up even about, you know, can a teacher hug or console a child? I have tied so many shoes in kindergarten and first grade, I should be in the shoe business, okay? So I understand what goes on in the schools. The loss of one student would be horrible, and also the loss of a teacher and our responsibility for that. All I'm saying with this resolution is that we would support either legislation or executive order to keep schools closed. That's all it does. It doesn't condemn the work of any committee or anything like that. That's all it is. Just support for those actions. Thank you.
Any other board members?
If nobody else wants to speak, I just want to add one thing. I do greatly appreciate the work that the administration and this committee did on the project. It's not in any way saying that I don't think you did a good job or anything like that, or that I think the plan is bad. I think it's the best possible plan under the circumstances, and possibly maybe down the road in a couple of months, that might be the plan that will go into effect. I just don't think this is the time. And I also think believe me, I think it's almost inevitable at this time that at some point you're gonna have a couple cases of COVID, classes are gonna close, before you know it, the school's gonna close. I just think we're kidding ourselves right now thinking that the schools are gonna stay open based upon what I'm seeing in other states, what I'm seeing on the news, and that's why I'm supporting the plan.
Charlie,
I think anybody else?
I have one question. So I don't know if this would be for Renee or for Mr. Mike O'Brien. What does this have to do with athletics? If this proposal is for, you know, no in-person class, are you including athletics as well?
You addressed that question to me?
Oh, yeah, I wasn't sure who to address.
Yeah, okay. When such legislation or executive orders would come about, and I'm just suggesting I would support them, they would include that. And I think your wishful thinking about athletics is wishful thinking. If you look at what's going on in athletics, colleges, conferences, public schools that have already canceled the season. I like athletics too. There's nobody that's ever been a bigger supporter for 52 years of Montville High School than myself. That person doesn't exist. Okay, I support athletics. But when they get to that issue, they will address that issue, and it may be addressed even before. Okay, so I do support athletics. I would like to see them go, but I don't think it's going to happen. And the life of a single football player or soccer player or whoever it is not worth a season of 6 games. And that's all it's going to be at this point.
I think if there's no others, just to summarize, basically we're being asked, a board member introduced a resolution, passing the resolution on to the legislatures or whoever there were to support not opening the schools for person-to-person instruction in September. All the rest of it regarding athletics and everything is depending upon what happens with the governor. Remember, we are not voting to open or close the schools. We are voting to send a resolution encouraging the people to be not to open the schools for person-to-person instruction. Do I understand that right? Everyone agrees with that? Okay, let's have a roll call on J2. I didn't see any hands go up. I can't see any hands. Anyone disagree?
No disagree.
Okay. Let's have a roll call, Mrs. Slunt, please.
Mr. O'Brien,
Aye.
Mr. Palma,
Yes.
Dr. Cordolino,
Yes.
Mr. Daughtry,
Yes.
Mrs. Fano,
No.
Dr. Modrak,
No.
Mr. Rappaport,
No.
Ms. Zuckerman,
Yes.
Mr. Grau.
I am voting no because all we are doing is passing our thoughts and our desires by resolution onto the legislators. I don't want anyone to think here that we are voting yes to close the schools in September, because that was not the motion and that's not the intent. Right now, we are approved the plan. Mr. O'Brien, if you would like to change your vote on the plan, I would give you that option. If not, that's up to you.
Well, given that J2 has apparently passed, is that?
We
Would you like to change J1?
Charlie, we haven't announced the result of the vote on J2. We have to do that first.
J2 passed 5 yay votes to 4 no votes.
No. Oh, I didn't vote no. I'm voting yes to support the resolution being sent.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said no. Okay, so it's 6 yeses to 3 noes.
Okay. Now we have J1 and J2. Are we allowed to move on? Anybody else? Any questions of J1 and J2?
Did Mr. O'Brien want to change?
Yes.
Wants to vote.
Given
Did
that
you want to change your vote, Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, given that J2 has passed, I support.
Did you want to change? You wanted to change your vote on J1, correct?
Yeah, I want to vote now on J1.
Okay.
Yes. I
Very
vote to
good.
approve. Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to second one, section K. We have 6 items listed on the agenda and an addendum. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, Mr. Slunt?
Dr. Cordolino,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Aye.
Mr. Daughtry,
Yes.
Mrs. Fano,
Yes.
Dr. Modrak,
Yes.
Mr. Rappaport,
Yes.
Mrs. Zuckerman,
Yes.
Mr. Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Grau.
Yes. Section N, the policies, motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Dr. Cordolino,
Yes.
Mr. Palma,
Yes.
Mr. Daughtry,
Yes.
Ms. Fano,
Yes.
Dr. Modrak,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Aye.
Mr. Rappaport,
Yes.
Ms. Zuckerman,
Yes.
Mr. Grau.
Yes. All right, we're not going into close. There's no old business. Hopefully there's no general board and we can go back to public participation. Anybody have anything to say before we open up the public participation again? Speak up. I can't see any hands. Okay.
No, nobody.
Huh?
Nobody.
For the members of the public, we have now concluded the business section of the meeting this morning rather. I would entertain it for some more questions before we adjourn.
Yes. Donna? Donna, you're muted.
Yes, hi. Hello? Can you hear me?
Good morning, we can hear you. Yes, we can.
Yes, hi. Good morning. Hi, my question is, and I'm not sure if I actually heard it right the first time earlier this morning about the virtual learning for elementary school. Sorry, I have two girls going to Valley View. One will be attending 4th grade and the second one will be a 2nd grader. Is my understanding correct that if we elect 100%, you're saying that there will not be live streaming and that the remote learning or the virtual learning will be similar to what the kids had during, like, from between March through June?
No, Donna, you heard that not correctly. That's just about the opposite of what will take place. The students who are full-time remote will have daily virtual contact with their teachers in all of those subject areas.
Okay, so and how would the daily contact with the teachers happen? Like, is that live streaming? Because I thought that's not possible.
It is possible, and that is the plan.
So if we choose 100% remote, it is through live streaming, or is that the live streaming not with the same classroom but with other students in the district?
That's the difference. There will be live streaming of the lessons. It will not be, as if a student was assigned to an in-person class. There will be a separate full-time remote class that will probably encompass students at the elementary level from across the district. But the teacher will deal with those students and there will be live stream lessons to that full-time remote class.
I see. Okay, so why can that happen with the current class, with the kids' current class, so that they can, be with their current, be with the teacher that they assigned to, and the students that, their classmates that they assigned to? Why does the separate remote learning have to be with other district or with the other groups of students?
All right, Donna, I'm not sure when you joined the meeting, but I did respond to this question, and this was after thorough discussion on the part of the district administration, supervisors. We do not believe that that model that we're employing at the middle and high school level works at the elementary level. Due to the student's attention span and a teacher trying to manage students who are in the classroom as well as zooming in remotely, is really not an efficient and effective way to deliver instruction at the elementary level. So that's why we have not adopted that model.
Donna, I'm going to have to cut you off now because we still have quite a few people that have questions, and I'm going to go ask Dr. Rovtar now to get these people, but I'm going to have to limit you to one question because there's still quite a few people who would like to speak, and I'd like to give everyone the opportunity. So if you have 2 or 3 questions, pick the best one to ask us, okay?
Okay.
Go ahead. Thank you, Don. Dr. Rovtar.
Okay, Kristen Lynch, Bambooling.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my question. I have a question. Will the resource room speech OT-PT be a full-out situation? Because that has not been answered.
For the in-person instruction?
Yes, that is correct.
We are anticipating that those therapies will still occur.
Okay. It'll be a pull out of the classroom?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just making sure. And I also wanted to ask My other.
No. I'm sorry. Just one question, dear. We got to you can come back in at the end of the meeting.
What are you going to
Okay?
give to the teachers to accommodate them on virtual learning?
Excuse me.
What are we doing for the teachers?
Yes.
What am I?
I didn't understand the question.
What are the
Please.
What are the accommodations
Is this Donna?
for the teachers?
Donna, is this Donna?
to do virtual learning correctly. You gave some
Kristen, I'm sorry.
5 questions. These are real questions people have. What?
Right. So
what
I didn't understand your question. If you could please restate it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bogatar. What training is the district providing teachers to accommodate online learning? What is the district providing each of the teachers to do this?
Yeah, I did address this earlier. Unfortunately, in the spring, we were thrown into remote learning without any preparation. We do have professional development training that is scheduled for our teachers when they return for their in-service days prior to the opening of school. We will be providing programs to help them expand their skills with regard to the learning platforms we use. There are a number of resources that are also available to them online. They can even access them during the summer if they so choose. We also will be using time that's available to us through professional development and faculty meetings to continue to support them with remote learning once the school year starts. Okay, I'm going to move on to Deborah Gilman. Gilman. Deborah, you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, very good. My daughter will be attending Montville High School and the Share Time program. Prior to COVID-19, there has been somewhat of a disconnect when it comes to information sharing, particularly in a situation where the homeschool deviates from the regular schedule. My question then is, with students attending the homeschool 2 days a week, but the tech school 4 days a week, what is the transportation plan to get them to the tech school on virtual learning days, or is there a plan in place at this time?
Yes, we are working on that transportation-wise. We do understand the obligation for them to attend, even on those days when we are not open. So our transportation folks are working on that at the moment.
Okay, so then I can count on transportation, or would that be a situation where it's possible we would be having to transport the child?
Well, I don't know how old your child is. I mean, some of the senior students will probably elect to drive themselves to school. So some of that may be on a case-by-case basis, but we're working right now to try to address the transportation issues for the students attending those programs.
Okay, so then for the days when she is not virtual and because she is 16, so on the days when she's actually attending in-person class at Montville High School, is that still in place where the bus would transport her then to the technical school? Or is that all still open-ended?
Unfortunately, I do not work that directly with the transportation arrangements, so I'm hesitant to give you a definite answer.
Okay.
But we can certainly get that information from the folks that have the direct involvement in transportation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Tom Radcliffe?
Is he muted?
Hear me now?
Yep, can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. So this time it worked. So I also have a question regarding the shared program. How would the program work with the, it's our understanding that VOTEC would be obviously in person. So our son would attend in the morning, and with high school, I believe it's in afternoon that it would be virtual. So is that all correct? And on the day where it is a virtual class for VOTEC, would he be required to then go into school on that Wednesday? Hopefully that made sense.
Well, our school is not open on Wednesday. So no one is attending on Wednesday here at Montville Township.
Okay. No.
In terms of the other schedules, I mean, some of that really needs to be addressed on a student-by-student basis, and I know that the school counselors at the high school and the director of counseling is working on some of those arrangements. So if you have some questions about that, I would suggest that you reach out to the school counseling department at the high school.
However, before the gentleman leaves, the vote check, if someone's there full-time and vote check is opened every day, we would be providing transportation to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, mine was not a question about transportation. Our son is a senior, so he would probably drive himself, so that's fine. It was more of a concern on how the shared program in general was going to work with the Montville in-person option versus the full-time virtual. So I wanted to get a better understanding of that. We did reach out to the counselor already up at the high school, and she didn't have any specifics. So I don't know when to expect that type of information, with the understanding we have to decide by the 12th. That information still hasn't been made available. So I don't really know what option we would need to take.
The schedule for the high school is the same, whether a student is attending in person or remote. So that schedule runs in the morning from whatever it is, 7:25 to 11:55. That schedule is the same whether the student is in person or remote. So if there needs to be some fine tuning of that schedule because your child needs to depart to go to a program at the VOTEC, those are the kinds of detailed things that we have to work out. But the schedule is there, it's in the plan. There's no secrets there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Sherry Eichenbaum?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
A little louder, please.
Oh, can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, hi. So I have a boy starting first grade at Valley View. I mean, it's second year at Valley View. So my question is, have you considered having any kind of chat room for the kids that are going to go virtual in September so they can get to know each other, so it could feel a little more personal since they're going to be online? Is that something that you could consider doing? Like a get to know you chat room before the start of school, kind of like what they did in kindergarten, which was on the playground, but this would be like done virtually if you're not doing anything in person.
That is not something that we are considering, although I know that the teachers themselves will be having some get to know you online activities with their classes once the school year starts.
Okay, like icebreakers. And then are you going to have any gifted and talented programming for virtual students? Because I don't know what's going on with that. So I was wondering, is that going to be available for distance learners? And
to the extent that we can provide some of those enrichment activities, we certainly will, whether the students are in person or full-time remote.
And when would we know from the application process if our students are in that or not? Would we have heard by now, or would we be hearing soon? How does that work?
That will probably come closer to the start of the school year when you receive all of the normal communication from the building principal.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Katie Halpern. Mrs. Halpern, you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, there's a delay in the process. I have two questions. Reading through the plan, I understand the logistical concerns and the reasons that prevent us from having a full school day in person, But I don't understand why on the all virtual Wednesdays, we're also following a shortened half-day schedule, particularly at the middle and high school levels. And why in the event that we would have to go all virtual, if the situation in the world required it, if we would still be following these shortened half-days at those levels.
I think the virtual Wednesday was created, and it's different at the different grade levels. We're following a very similar model to what most schools in Morris County have adopted. That is pretty much where people are. I think we've seen, based on our experience in the spring, that the ability to do a full day of virtual learning, particularly at the lower grade levels, is very difficult to accomplish. So I think the teachers are, looking to focus that instruction in that virtual time frame, and that's why we have the condensed schedule on those days.
Yeah, I completely understand why, especially at the elementary school level, a full virtual day would not be feasible. But I think that things would be different at the middle school and especially the high school level. And I know there are Denville and Morris County, even this spring, was following to their normal school day schedule at the middle and high school levels. My second question, very briefly, I also know Lazar is continuing to split the schedule like they did during distance learning last year, where they have, unrelated to the A and B day cohort, they have A and B days. A, you only get the morning classes. B, you only get the afternoon classes. I don't understand. I'm having trouble understanding that rationale and why you wouldn't do what the high school's doing and have some instruction in every class every day to better cover the curriculum.
Well, just so you understand, the high school does not have every class meet every day. It is a rotational schedule.
Yes, but they have every class that they would normally have on a regular school day. Right. There's 6 out of the 8 things.
The middle school faculty and the administration felt very strongly that this model worked best for them to be able to have longer interaction with the students on those days. So I respect their decision. They know the kids. They know what the best model is at that level, and that's what they have adopted.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the response.
Okay, Natalia Ka. Natalia, you are muted.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, good. My questions will be related to full virtual version of learning. The first one is if child which is online, learning online virtually full time is getting sick, because kids do get sick regardless of COVID. And they can get to hospital, they can get to situations where they need to take time off from school. What do we do in this case? Do we report like a normal absence to the child when they cannot attend the virtual lesson?
Yes, we will be giving additional information about reporting absences, but if a child is remote and not able to participate, we would most likely expect that to be reported as an absence. But as I mentioned in a previous comment, we will be providing specific instruction about reporting absences prior to the start of school.
Okay, thank you. Second question is like how lab classes for full-time virtual students will be held?
The lab classes for full-time virtual students will be an online learning experience for them. If they're not in the building, they're learning remotely, and the lab experience will be slightly different. The teacher will most likely have to provide some alternate activities for them. they're not in the building, we can't do an in-person lab with them.
So it's up to the teachers how they're going to set it up for a full-time remote students. Or
the teachers will deal with that. I can't speak
yeah,
how
okay,
the teachers.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it's too much. Yeah, it's too much. And my last question is about special needs kids, because if we go full-time virtual, then the special needs kids have to have the issues addressed in that situation. So do we expect like changes to the IEPs? Should we address those concerns right now as parents, or should we wait till the school year starts? How do you think we should proceed as parents with special needs kids?
If you have concerns about your child's IEP, I would suggest that you reach out to the case manager.
Just directly right now? You mean right now before school year starts?
Some of them are available during the summer. If not, I would send your question to Mrs. Desai, who is our Director of Special Education.
Okay, we just didn't want to confuse anybody with our questions to which nobody has any answers yet. So that's why I was asking. So thank you. Thank you. That's all questions that I have.
Karen Rankin. Karen, you're muted.
Hi, good morning. My son Aiden is going to be starting Lazar this September, and I guess my question was, someone had asked if there's a positive COVID case in the elementary school, and I think you explained that then the class would quarantine. What would happen at Lazar and at the high school level where the student might be exposed to many staff members or many different classrooms?
I mean, that would be the same. Whatever the contact tracing process yields, the Department of Health will contact those people. If it's, it probably will be, the effect will be multiplied at the high school and the middle school level due to the fact that those children do change classes. And, if those classes are required to quarantine, then, that will happen, and that instruction, will be done, through a virtual format.
Okay, thank you.
Erica da Costa. Erica, I think you're muted. Okay, you should be good now, Erica.
Okay, thank you. I actually just wanted to know, I have two boys that are going to be a fifth grader and a kindergartner starting at Cedar Hill. And before the 12th comes and we have to make our decision as far as if we're going to send them or do remote learning, I was wondering if you can paint a picture of what the classroom is going to be like for these children, because my fifth grader is very social. My kindergartner they're both boys, so they're very social, they're very active. And I know that you have to follow the guidelines as far as the social distancing goes. They're going to be required to wear masks for the time that they're there. I'm not positive if you're doing the desk shields or not. I'm just curious what kind of socialization they're actually going to be able to get because of all these restrictions around COVID. If it's really going to be, I know it's not going to be the school they've ever seen before, but I'm curious if there's going to be any type of allowance for socialization for these kids, or is it just, being in school in their classroom is the socialization they're going to get, just seeing the other children and not being able to interact with them?
I think that's probably, your characterization is probably pretty accurate. We will have the desks spaced out. There will be desk shields on the desks. We won't have students gathering. We won't have them working in small groups. The socialization comes from them actually being in the same room with their classmates and the teacher. They can't touch each other. They can't share materials. So, we're very limited in terms of what we can do.
And I respect that and understand that. I just, coming from a wellness aspect, I just don't see how that, they're children, and they're unfortunately have to be thrown into this, that they really can't understand it. But I just foresee that causing more problems for them than good, than just doing remote learning with the same peers they've been with all along and doing some sort of live streaming like the other schools are doing. And mostly I'm saying this for my 5th grader. The kindergartner, I honestly don't know how they could sit at a computer for 4 hours. I don't see that happening, especially a 5-year-old boy. But as far as my 5th grader goes, I think he's more than capable of sitting, doing a virtual in-person type of a learning with his classmates and being able to see them and see the teacher and have the maturity to be able to withstand that. I understand though the younger children definitely do not. I'm a Montessori teacher, so I work with kids from 2 to 6. I definitely agree that they cannot sit and focus for something like that. But as far as a 5th grader goes, I don't see why that wouldn't be able to be an option as far as for 5th graders to do. But I also just I was just curious to see if you had any insight about that you thought I'm leaning more towards this causing more damage for them socially, emotionally, mentally than just doing remote learning, because really they're going to school, but they're not doing anything that's social. They're not interacting with their peers. They're not doing gym. They're not playing. They're not being children. They're really just going to be sitting in a cubicle all day. To me, it seems like it's heartbreaking. So I'm just trying to get as much information as a visual picture before I make my decision on what I'm going to do with my 5th grader.
Okay, and again, those are the decisions that parents have to make on an individual basis. I think we still have quite a number of questions, about 22. So I would ask people if you could limit it to questions and not comments. I think that might help us move the meeting along a little bit. If I could call on Rhonda. Rhonda, you're muted. Rhonda, you need to unmute yourself. All right, I'm going to skip over you, Rhonda. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Dr. Robitar, I'm here.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, once again, I want to thank you for answering the emails I had sent you. I am glad we're having desk shields. I do have a question and a concern with all the things we've been reading in the news in Europe and in China and so forth. There have been children that have passed away from wearing masks in high heat or in activity. So my concern, which another mother had brought up, is is there a possibility that they have desk shields that, if they get hot, can they lower their mask for a few moments so they can catch a breath? None of the children, and I don't think any parent can attest to this, have worn a mask for 5 hours. And I've spoken to multiple doctors and so forth. They're not used to it. And to say to desensitize them, it's a long time even for an adult to wear a mask with no break. Is there something that the school district can do to ensure the parents that kids aren't going to pass out or get lightheaded or whatnot because they're strapped in a mask for 5 hours? I agree with the woman with, the mask break. So I wanted to see if the town doctor was going to be addressing that, because that is a big concern with pediatricians as well, the length of mask time with no break.
Rhonda, this is something that is totally out of the district's hands. The governor has decreed that masks must be worn by everybody in school at all times. So, while we can say, if the children can go outside for a break, take their mask off momentarily, but inside the building, he has been very direct about that, and that's not something that we have any control over.
No, and I understand that, but would there be a place or somebody outside? So if a child raised their hand and said, I'm having trouble breathing, can I go take a break? A teacher can't just leave with one student. So how will that be addressed?
That's not something that we can provide. We're not having someone stand outside and allow students to exit the building. That's just not something that we're entertaining.
And I mean, I know I'm sorry?
Rhonda, if you have another question, we really can't, we can't debate a subject.
My other question was, are we having specials? Because I did not hear earlier. I may have jumped on too late. Will there be specials in each class?
It's included in the plan. The specials are built into the schedule at the elementary level. They will be occurring.
Right, but will they be in each classroom? They're not moving, correct?
That's correct. The plan does say that they will be coming, those teachers will be coming into the classroom to meet with the students.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Allison Credence.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Good morning. My question regarding virtual Wednesdays, particularly at the elementary level, how much instruction face-to-face will the students actually get? In the spring, it was actually pretty limited. And I wonder if it's going to be more of the same with mostly posted assignments to do on their own, or if there will be more face-to-face.
As I stated before, we have changed our expectations for the virtual component. The teachers are required to have daily in-person virtual meetings with the students. They will be following a schedule of all of the classes. So we're expecting that the look of virtual education will be quite different than what we had in the spring.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be brief.
Jessica Lawler.
Janice.
Oh, sorry, Janice Lawler. Lawler. Janice, you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi. So I read in the Q&A that you had discussed that there would be an update to the code of conduct for the mask wearing, and that there would be a series of consequences for kids who were pulling it down or whatever they were doing that was not abiding by the actual wearing it full time the entire day. When will that be available for us? Because I have a child with special needs and he's doing his best, but I'm not sure, he might not touch it or move it or whatever. And I need to understand what those consequences are for me to make a decision as to whether he can go to school or not.
Okay, the consequences, I'm assuming that you're talking at the elementary level, and that will most likely
he's in
come
middle
out.
school. He's in the middle school?
Oh, it's the middle.
I apologize,
Okay,
I was supposed to say that.
The consequences, are typical as to, any other violation of student conduct. It starts with a warning, proceeds to, call to the parents, some type of, in-school consequence, and then ultimately, out-of-school suspension. I know that sounds severe, but, these are the kinds of consequences that that progressive discipline that we have for all of our code of conduct violations.
So you're telling me I cannot send my son to school then, and because I'm not allowed to change him to virtual once he starts, then I have to decide that he cannot even try this?
I think, parents have to make their own decisions about what they feel their students are capable of. And
So
if
again,
you
you're
truly
punishing
feel-
the special needs kids because they are not capable of doing everything that every other kid can do?
Right. Again, if you have special ed concerns, I would suggest that you have a conversation with someone in the special ed department. Obviously, if this is a behavioral manifestation in terms of a child repeatedly touching their mask, I mean, that's something that we can certainly consider. But, that in your particular case appears to be, something that would, we'd want to take a look at on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Melissa Barrett? You're muted, Melissa.
Hi,
Hi, yes. My question is, if I decide my son will be going as Woodmont, he has an IEP. So you did answer the question that they will still be pulled out. If he does all virtual, will he just have two teachers, a regular teacher and a special education teacher that will do like math and reading with him, or how will that work?
Yes. Those teachers are still assigned to work with the students. How they arrange that and how they, break up working with those particular students, I can't speak to that directly. That's something that will be arranged by the teachers.
Okay, because when I was reading the plan that you sent home, I thought there was something that said maybe then they'd have to do in the afternoon because those teachers would be doing in person in the morning. Is that true that he might, because he has an IEP, have to do virtual in the morning and then virtual in the afternoon with his special education class? Or no?
No, I think the comment in the plan really deals more with specifically with therapies. That if the therapy can't be scheduled during the morning part of the day, that some of those arrangements will be made in the afternoon.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Rupak Bajar.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, great, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking your morning to answer all of our questions, and I do appreciate the plan that you guys have put forth. As a parent, as a mom of a first grader in Hilldale, this is a very hard decision as a parent to make. My husband and I are both working parents, and so in regards to making this decision, I feel like the remote option with the district-wide, I don't feel like we have enough details to make that decision. And so my question really is, in the morning, is it going to be face-to-face the whole entire half a day? Or is it, I know you had mentioned that it is going to be different from the spring, but if you can paint that picture for me to help me make that decision, that would be number one, very helpful. And then secondly, I just want to put this forward, just hearing the feedback on this call for the past hour and a half, a lot of the parents are questioning, why is the elementary school not being able to do the live stream? I do think as small kiddos, they need that emotional attachment. They need to see some of their classmates, whether it's virtual or in class, the same ones that they went to class with the year before. So if we can reconsider that, I would really appreciate that. So I'm going to leave these two questions with you.
At this point, we're not considering any reconfiguration with regard to the full-time remote at the elementary level. It's just logistically not possible to provide a live stream for those students into a regular in-person classroom. With regard to the structure, there will be virtual interaction for full-time remote students with the teachers on a daily basis. Can I say that it's going to be 4 hours straight? No, because that's likely not going to happen. Just as, in a regular in-person classroom, the teacher is not talking at the students for 4 straight hours. The students may have some work that they need to do independently. Then the teacher will reconvene them. They'll have a discussion. Students may be sent to breakout rooms for a small group discussion amongst other classmates. So, there will be that engagement for 4 hours, but will it be the teacher talking at them for 4 hours? I would say probably not.
Yeah, I just think it's hard because, yeah. No, and I appreciate that. And thank you for that transparency. I just think it's hard when you have remote learning and it's not, in person and you don't have that teacher interaction. It's difficult for working parents then to fill that gap. And, I admire teachers because they have the patience and they are able to be in this profession and teach our kids. I'm not a teacher, and it was very, very difficult for me last spring to get my kid, up to speed and teacher the best way I can. And then lastly, once we find out in September for the gifted and talented, that's another aspect, right? Because in person, they were given that individual attention for the gifted and talent. Where if it's here in remote, what I'm hearing from you is that you guys are not sure how you guys are going to adapt to that from a remote standpoint.
We do have to work out the logistics for how that will work for the remote students.
Okay, well, thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Felicia Malelli.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, yeah, Felicia Malelli. I have a child in William Mason. We recently moved, so I have a child entering Cedar Hill and one in Lazar. My question kind of stems off a couple of recent ones regarding the wellness of the children, and incorporating. So my question for you directly is, what have you discussed with administration and staff in regards to reducing fear? I know we've talked about the safety restrictions and enforcing compliance, but we all know this is a little bit of a different situation. And for me, my interest is the wellness, social and emotional, and reducing that fear. Have you had any discussions with staff around that?
I think particularly at the elementary level, our teachers are very adept at, minimizing any anxiety that the students will have. I mean, going back to a prior question, we can't give out hugs, but I think our teachers are, they've missed that interaction with the students. So when they have it back in the classroom, I think the students will find a very welcoming environment, even though we will have, some of these, unusual circumstances with desk shields and desks being separated. But I have no doubt that our teachers will do everything possible to make kids feel comfortable, to reduce that anxiety. I mean, certainly, we're well grounded, the district, in mindfulness. And I think probably now more than ever before, those experiences will help our students to deal with that.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Lois Davis.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi there. Yep, we can hear you.
Good, almost afternoon, and thank you so much for all the time and hard work you've been putting into this. I'm wondering, has there been any consideration of how the PTA will run this year, especially in the elementary schools?
I would imagine that, that those groups will work with the principals. We're not allowing any group meetings in the building, so that interaction amongst the members will have to be done virtually at the present time. But I would think that there are probably still some very important ways that the PTAs can support the schools, just as they always have.
Very good. I just want to make sure that, parents are feeling connected to the faculty and so that there's some way for them to be involved. Thank you.
I hope so, yeah. Sabrine Ingersoll.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. My son goes to Woodmont School. I had a couple of questions with respect to this. How are we handling any of the common things and areas like bathrooms, doorknobs, and things like that? Is there a plan?
Yes, our custodial protocol is all outlined in the plan in terms of the areas to be cleaned. And as I indicated when I did the PowerPoint, the district has hired some additional custodial personnel to be in the buildings during the day to do periodic cleaning of those high-touch surface areas, doorknobs, those kinds of things. So, we are putting additional attention on that.
Okay, and another, this is a sort of a related question. Are we paying attention to students whose parents are healthcare workers who are in areas? I mean, this applies to my son because my wife works at St. Barnabas and she doesn't deal with patients, but she's in an environment which is of high risk. So are we addressing that in some way? Or do we need to let you know, or are you asking the parents to let you know?
We are not asking parents to let us know about that. We hope that each family is very carefully monitoring their own health and following all of the procedures in terms of hand washing, wearing face coverings to keep themselves safe. But no, parents don't need to report that to us.
Okay, and the last question I had was with respect to if a teacher falls sick, obviously it will go, what happens to the students? They will be going virtual, right? At that point, if a teacher falls sick? Okay, and if they go to virtual, is that virtual, that combined virtual which goes across the zones? Or is it going to be a virtual for those students who were in class?
Yeah, it would be a virtual experience for that particular class.
Okay, it's not the common, it's not going to go to the common virtual. No. Okay, all right, that was it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mrs. Taduni?
Good afternoon.
Taduni.
This is Tino and Alexis Taduni. We have 3 children at Cedar Hill, a rising 2nd grader and then 2 rising pre-K 4. To piggyback off of the, it was actually one of the board members' original questions at the beginning, and then one of the parents asked the question about, you know, you elect your kid to go to school, and then at some time at an interim period during the marking period, what have you turns up. And, you know, I guess, and it was even mentioned that the board considered this a lot. And even in the plan talked about how they would be afforded discretion, which almost implies on a case-by-case scenario. So could you give us a little bit of insight of how that discussion went? Obviously, this is fluid, right? Unprecedented times. But if you could give us any insight of the thinking of the board and how you guys deliberated this, of situations when discretion would be afforded, and maybe even goalposts, but just, you know, where one would and where versus where one would not.
I really can't give you examples of that. I think, you know, if there are unique situations that would require someone to want to make that transition, either way, you know, we will deal with that on a case-by-case basis. That's it.
Case by case.
So I'll put it to bed, but I guess, was there any discussion had at the board though, when you guys decided to be so crystal clear to talk about, you know, giving the board discretion? I mean, there must have been some, just let us in a little bit on how that discussion transpired, what was said would be helpful.
I think that the nature of it is that we continue to be in a situation where things are changing constantly, and we cannot anticipate what the future may bring. So, you know, having that flexibility in the plan allows us to deal with circumstances that, you know, at this point, we may not even be able to envision.
Right. Look, I can appreciate that. And I'm sure, you know, you making that comment can appreciate us as parents not knowing what's on the forefront, right, of what is very fluid and unprecedented times. That's why I asked the question, if you give me any context. But if you're not able to do so or let us in, I guess I'll move on to my second question for the pre-K 4. So you know, there wasn't a lot of detail in the plan about them. Actually, nothing. We did reach out and we were told they'd be similar to what, you know, between what the kids are used to. I guess maybe help us understand between the various, I'll call them PlayStations, but if you've got you know, 4 or 5, and we understand that at max would be 2. So if you've got, you know, folks that are, you know, or if you've got a classroom that's got, let's say, in excess of 10 to 12 kids, how is that going to work? And at the same time, if virtual versus in class is the same, how does that work with children that we know are going to struggle to have attention for 2.5 hours or however long the class time is? But you get the crux of my question. Help me understand how they will be one and the same. And then help me understand for the ones that are in the class, when they exceed the, whatever the quota is going to be. I use 10 as my example, but if they exceed that quota of 2 per station, what's the thinking there? Because again, there hasn't been a lot of, there was no mention of this in the plan. We got an email saying it'd be similar, but you know, it's almost akin to the comment that some of the special education folks made. You know, you want us to make a decision again this coming week, but we haven't been afforded the full transparency on how this all will look. So any daylight you could shed on that would be helpful.
I don't understand what you mean by stations. If you're talking about centers that we typically have in an elementary classroom.
That's right. Centers.
They don't
Yep.
exist. They don't exist. For having students work in groups at a station, we can't have that type of activity take place.
Okay, I guess, and you're right. I should have used the word centers, not stations. But that's in the email we got. It did say 2 kids together. So I don't know if there's just miscommunication in that email that we got from.
I don't know. What email are you referring to that talked about 2 kids together? It doesn't sound like any correspondence that I have sent out.
Someone by the name of Rebecca, maybe? Yeah, responded to us via email. Look, you know, maybe it was mistyped or what have you from her, but that's what she said. Yeah, I guess I'm more concerned about, Renee, is when are we going to get the details between how the pre-K 4 the school will look for them, the school year will look for them. That's what I'm more concerned about.
I mean, you have the schedule, and I try to describe the classroom as best as I can. If you listen to Governor Murphy's briefings, he has said time and time and again, and I would echo his comment, you know, what we are looking at for school in September will not resemble anything that you feel is comfortable or you know, something that you're used to. You know, our classrooms will look different. Things will be handled differently in the classroom. I mean, there's I don't know what more I can say other than, you know, what I've already said.
Last point, I'll pass it off. The virtual side of it for pre-K 4, will it be continuous, the full 2.5 hours, almost akin to a live stream, but where the kids are going to be engaged, or how is that going to work?
Again, I can't speak to how individual teachers will create their lessons and the way that they will schedule individual components of those lessons. Yes, there will be live streaming every day. Yes, they will probably have some time when the students will work independently and be in breakout rooms. But how much of that time is included in any particular teacher's lesson plan, I can't speak to that. You know, I can tell you, and I've said it before, that our expectations in terms of the virtual learning, you know, are much more rigorous than what we had in the spring. And I think that, you know, and people will see that when school starts.
Renee, I appreciate it. My last comment, just I think some FAQs on what type of discretion the board would provide on examples would be very helpful for folks to think about when they make this decision. I hope the board considers that. Pass it off. Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate your comment. I'm skipping over some people that we've previously heard from. So, you know, we still have quite a number of questions, and, you know, at some point we need to come to an end. But I'm going to call on Vicki Marquetta.
Hello, good afternoon, Dr. Rovtar, Mr. O'Brien. Thank you for taking the questions. My question is in relation to the J2 resolution that was just passed by the board. I understand that this does not effectively move the district into a full-time virtual learning. However, my question is, should Governor Murphy push it onto the school districts where they are allowed to opt for that, as the NJEA is pushing? Does the J2 resolution then take effect, or does the board need to go back and vote? Dr. Bain had asked a similar question, and it didn't seem like there was this closed sessions meeting that you had talked about. And Mr. O'Brien, you had said that you would, in fact, go back to the parents. But now we're learning that the closed session seemed to discuss this. There was the vote. So if Governor Murphy moves this and puts it on the school districts to allow for full-time virtual, does J2 then go into effect, and are we then a full-time remote learning district?
May I answer that, Mr. Grau?
Well, the J2 resolution is not a resolution that reflects on this school district. It's a request that the people in power consider that school not return to in-person instruction. But this district has not made a decision to not offer in-person instruction at this period of time. That would be a separate discussion and a separate action by the Board of Education.
I also, we're discussing the reopening plan right now, and as Renee said it, and we've said it before, if and when that comes, if Murphy decides everything's going to be closed, that's one thing. If he decides to throw it back to the local level, that'll be a discussion for a whole nother meeting. Okay,
and I'm sure you can understand, again, as a parent listening in on this and hearing this J2.
Yeah, but I hope you understand what we just said.
I do understand what you just said. And I'm also, again, concerned because the members of the Board of Education, you have essentially 9 people voting, and I'm wondering what say they're reflecting of the parents. What is this vote a personal vote?
All I'm saying is, when the question and options become available, then we'll have a public meeting to decide which way to go. But it's like the what if question.
As long as that's the
It's
case.
like the what if question.
We are not committed to close to all virtual, to all full remote learning at this point in time.
I understand that. Again, my concern is as a parent, we have been told things after the fact with surveys sent after the fact. Such a decision, and you're saying that you would have a meeting to vote. Again, I am hoping that such a survey would be sent prior to, so that our board members are not placing these votes, which in effect would undo a district committee, which was meant to be representative. As a parent, I'm strictly for transparency and representation.
We hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hear you.
Okay, Imad, Robbie?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Good, thank you. First, I want to thank all your efforts to make this happen for our kids. I just have a couple of questions. One is about temperature screening. And as we learned through the COVID-19 experience this year, there are 2 types of carriers for the virus. One is symptomatic and the other one is asymptomatic. Have you guys had any discussion about asymptomatic students that are wearing a mask and could come to the class and still transmit the disease?
The only discussion that we've had, and members that we did have several members of the medical field on our committee. The screening is not just temperature. We asked other questions to get input as to whether people have other symptoms as well. But we do recognize that people can be asymptomatic, and unfortunately, there's really not much that the school district can do to determine whether those people are COVID positive or not.
Right, and this is what I'm wondering, like a screening for temperature at home may not help for asymptomatic students or staff who's coming to school, and it's possible to transmit that disease,
Right, and there's just no way for us to provide that type of guarantee.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question regarding the switch from in-person to remote to full remote. You mentioned, I think earlier on, my kids actually go to elementary school at Valley View. You mentioned that could be done at the end of the marking period. Is that what is the definition of the end of marking period? Is that by December or end of the school semester?
Yeah, it would be December for the elementary. The elementary students are on a trimester as opposed to a marking period. But all of those dates, are typically shared by the principals, and you would need to give us 10 days notice prior to the start of that new trimester.
All right, thank you so much.
Long Jang.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I was just curious. You mentioned earlier that you guys have the technology to do the virtual learning, but you do not have the technology to do live streaming?
No, we have technology to do live streaming. We do. In fact,
So-
that's what's going on at the middle and high school level.
Okay, so my question is, with the concern of, if anybody call, there's concern that they might have the virus. So parents are taking extra precaution by keeping their kids at home. So wouldn't it help motivate them to do so when you have a situation where you're trying to be extra precautious? Let's say they have a cold, but or a small headache or whatnot, that you guys can do live streaming so they can keep up with the class. That way they don't have to miss a lot of the sessions. So why wouldn't you do that?
I appreciate your perspective. However, for the teacher managing that situation, it's not as easy as you described. For a teacher in a classroom at the elementary level to engage and manage students that are both remote and in person is very challenging and very difficult, and it does not provide best educational instructional experience.
No,
So
my
that's why
question
we
is
have
not about. My question is not about the virtual. My question was about just live streaming. Period.
Right.
No
Well,
interaction. So you can still teach while all you're doing is live streaming, right? I'm not asking you to do anything virtual, no interaction, but the capabilities for the kids to be able to at least follow along if possible.
Yeah, that's really not an efficient or effective model at the elementary level when the student doesn't have the ability to answer questions and engage in the classroom. So we have not elected that model at the elementary level. Okay, I'm going to move on to Veronica Cattle. Veronica, you're muted.
We keep getting more people coming online, Renee.
We're down to 11.
No, it's just fine.
Veronica, you're muted.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, I'm here with my husband, Naresh Katel and Veronica Katel, and we just have two questions. The number one question that I have is I have two kids, one going to Lazar and the other one going to second grade at Valley View. My question is precisely for the one that is going to second grade. You mentioned that it's going to be one Wednesday that is going to be virtual. Is the virtual meeting going to be structured from 8:30 to 12, or I'm sorry, I did not understand that very well.
Yeah, the virtual component will take place in the morning time frame.
Okay, thank you. And my husband has the second question.
Yes, thank you for taking my question. My question is for a
little louder.
For students going to Lazar, are there going to be any after-school programs that they can attend, clubs and things like that?
No, we are not currently. There will be some supplemental education programs for some of the students as with regard to IEPs, but at this point, there are no clubs or extracurricular activities offered at the middle school level.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Sarah Kareem.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Zara. Both of my kids go to Woodmont. My son will be going to 4th grade and my daughter will be going to 1st grade in the coming weeks. I just have a question about the face mask options. Like I'm more confident for my son, but I'm not really sure how my 1st grader will adapt to, keeping the mask on for the entire 4 hours she's going to be in the school. So I know that you're going to follow the CDC or more so state guidelines, but will the students be given choice to use face shields
You know,
A face shield is not an acceptable alternative. Students can wear a face shield if they want additional protection in addition to wearing a face covering, but a face covering must be worn. That is by law, by executive order of the governor.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Nicole McDonough?
Unmute. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you to the board, to you, Dr. Rovtar, to the reopening committee, and all 39 parents who spoke before me. I really think that, as Governor Murphy says almost every day, we are all in this together. And so I appreciate this opportunity. And I just want you to know at the outset, I have read everything that you, Dr. Rovtar, have provided, and my questions here are sincere in what is really a unique and historic moment in history. So I would like to be given the opportunity to be heard. I have 3 questions, and they all relate strictly to the full-time remote learning option for elementary students, which I understand will be handled on a district-wide basis. So these questions are not appropriate, obviously, for my principal. I have 2 children who attend William Mason School, just for reference. My first question is, will there be a policy for the minimum number of hours the teachers must be communicating with the children during that period of 8:10 to 12:40? I understand you can't dictate exactly what the teachers will do, but as a board, will you be saying to the teachers you should communicate with your students in the elementary schools at least this many hours virtually? My second question is a follow-up on parent Marina and parent Donna's questions regarding the remote teachers for each grade in the elementary schools. And it's 2 parts. Will all those teachers be certified in the same way that the in-person teachers in our district are certified? And the second part, Dr. Rovtar, you mentioned the professional development that we're offering to our teachers and in particular to our remote teachers. Can you be a little more specific on that? Are the topics of these courses just how to use Zoom or how to use Seesaw, or are they deeper, like how to really have the attention of a bunch of 7-year-olds remotely? So if you could provide some more detail on those topics, I would appreciate that. And my final question is really sprung upon what just happened in our town this week, where we still have, my in-laws still do not have power in town. And so my question is, what is your backup plan if our town should lose internet access for 1 or more days during the school year? Have you considered giving students in this full-time remote learning program a folder of dittos at the outset of the school year to use if that or something like that were to occur, so they could continue their learning even though they may not be able to access the internet to get onto Seesaw or see their teachers? And the one last thing I'd like to say before you answer those questions is I'd like to support Ms. Pina's suggestion to offer parents and students the opportunity to participate in a socially distanced outdoor meet and greet for each elementary grade within the first week of school for the students, so they can meet their classmates and teachers either right before or within a few days of the beginning of school. And I think that should be a priority for our district for these elementary students.
Okay, well, I appreciate your suggestions. We can certainly discuss that amongst the administrative team. With regard to the time, we have that expectation that the school day will encompass the same amount of time as the in-person students. We're not prescribing a certain amount of minutes that the teachers should be interacting, but we will be monitoring those situations. Principals will be checking on the remote teachers, and we'll be dealing with that as we move through the school year, but I don't have a specific number of minutes that I can share with you. With regard to teacher certification, we as a district are required to have only certified teachers teach our students, whether they are in-person or remote students. So they will all be certified at the appropriate grade levels. In terms of the professional development, yes, we are enhancing the skills of our teachers with regard to certain aspects of the learning platforms that we are using, and we do have additional information with regard to strategies for remote learning. A lot of that will happen through sessions or department meetings, faculty meetings, throughout the district. In terms of a backup plan, this district, unfortunately, since I've been here, has had multiple times even when we were on distance learning, where the power has gone out to our school districts. And those instances, we have an emergency closure. There really isn't a plan for us if there's a widespread power outage. We are trying very hard not to have remote learning based on dittos and worksheets for kids to fill out. So I don't know that is, a strategy that we would look to implement.
Okay, I appreciate your answers. Thank you. And I do yield to you as an expert with respect to the dittos or worksheets, which I understand they're now called, not dittos, from my time in school. But I would like for the board to consider something as a backup plan, because that could be an issue. So it would just be nice if parents knew what happens if the internet goes down. So that's all. But thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Syed Ali. You left, okay. Sorry, never mind. Syed, you're muted. Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, good afternoon, actually. So my question is regarding the temperature screening. I know we have a couple of other parents have also discussed about that. So currently, we are asking the parents to, do that at home and send it to the kids to the school. But is there any possibility, or you guys can consider putting contactless screening outside the building, as other districts are also considering? Because some folks probably they won't believe in all this, and then they won't send their kids by checking the temperature and everything. And because of one person, a lot of people might be at risk, right? So is there any possibility that we are spending or putting budget for filters and all that stuff? Can we consider this, putting the contactless screener outside the building, so every kid go through that, and then that's for benefits for everyone? And the other question was, for example, if my kid is choosing go virtual after December, are there any as you said, we have to have school provided technology. Is there going to be available at that time also? And how many people are going to be in the virtual at that time?
In answer to your first question, we are not at this point entertaining any kind of screening devices at the school. It's not recommended by the CDC, so we're just not incorporating that into our plan. With regards to the technology, that will be available at any point during the year if students need a district device. If you'd like to go full-time remote during the school year, we would provide that for you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Eileen Cole.
Hi, good afternoon. I have just a couple of quick questions. On the Genesis survey about whether or not attending remote or in person, I'm giving the choice to waive my transportation right. I was hoping, if I have to waive the transportation right because my child cannot come into school, if we have a miracle and she can safely return, can I get back in on the transportation? And then do you want to answer that first?
Oh, waiving the transportation is really more important for those students who will be attending in person. If you're a remote student, we're assuming that you're not taking the bus. But if you are remote and transition during the course of the year, if your child is entitled to busing because you live more than 2 or 2.5 miles from school, we would provide the busing for you.
Okay, great. And then another question, in addition to the masks and face shields, will children be allowed to wear sunglasses? Right now, currently student handbooks have it as something that they can't do, but to protect their eyes, can they wear sunglasses?
I would not suggest that sunglasses, but if there's some form of safety glasses, safety goggles,
Okay.
those type of things, I would say that they should be clear glass. That would certainly be allowed.
Okay, and then are you also going to look at the type of masks being worn by the students? Like say a kid comes in a bandana. I don't think that that is a safe face covering.
Well, a bandana does qualify as a face covering, so that would be permissible.
Okay, because there are on the CDC they have an emerging infectious disease journal, and they did an early release about the types of masks that were effective and ineffective. And I can send you the link to that. And my concern about a bandana. Yeah, I don't think a bandana is safe.
Bandana is not as effective. We recognize that, but it does qualify as a face covering.
Okay, because face masks were the reason that Corinth, Mississippi had the situation they did. They didn't wear face masks in the classroom.
Right.
It wasn't
we're
required.
To do that. We're required.
Well, thank you very much for answering my questions. Be well.
Okay, thank you too. Natalie Peel.
Austin.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello. Hi. I just wanted to get some clarity on how much confidence the board has that reopening the school is the right move for right now. And I also wanted to know what the teachers are saying. Are they comfortable with the reopening plan, and do they feel safe returning to the classroom? What are your conversations with them like?
Natalie, at the present time, New Jersey schools do not have the option of going full-time remote. We are required to provide in-person instruction. So that's the answer to that question right now.
Got it. So then you would say, I'm sorry, just so I can understand. I mean, you're required to do it, but you don't, I mean, can you offer me your opinion on if that requirement is, I mean, like what you think of that requirement?
I'm a servant, and I'm required to abide by the law. Right now, the law says I must provide an opportunity for students to have in-person instruction at all grade levels, and that's where we are. In terms of the teachers, we are currently working with teachers, those who, are requesting that they be allowed to teach remotely. That's a personnel situation that we're still in the midst of that, so that I am really not able to discuss the particulars of that. I will tell you that we did have teacher representatives on our reopening committee so that they did have input into the process of developing the reopening plan.
Okay, and just one more question if I could. What would cause the school to close again?
Pardon?
What might
cause based on guidance and discussions that would occur with the local Board of Health and or a direction, an executive order issued by the governor. Okay, we're losing your audio.
And the
Natalie.
J2 the board's thinking then? I mean, it seems like there is some.
Natalie, we are having trouble with your audio, so unfortunately, I'm gonna move on to our next question. Dan Jure Agrawal.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Speak loudly, please.
Yeah,
we are unable to hear your audio. So my suggestion would be if you have a question, if you would like to email that to me, I would be happy to respond it, but we just cannot hear your audio. Jennifer Dixon.
Look at that third one. Had another one come up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call. I appreciate the back to school plan that you have currently going on. And, you know, I think my kids, I have one at Cedar Hill going into 4th grade, and I have my daughters going into Lazar. I'm not so concerned about the middle school or the high school plans. Like everybody else, I have the same concerns on the elementary level. And my question is, based on the resolution that was just, approved, I know that we're discussing the current return plan, but when will we get a revised or an updated plan for if we were to go fully remote, especially at the elementary level, since we don't have the resources, as you've already expressed, to have the virtual, instruction that the Lazar and high school will be having?
At the elementary level, a full-time remote would just really be all of our classes being on that remote format where, the individual classroom teacher would be instructing the students assigned to his or her class. So, that would be, what the full-time remote would be. It would be district-wide.
But will the remote portion be similar to what we're expecting at the middle and the high school level? Or are we still keeping the expectation that they just can't do that same type of remote instruction? With, the hours and
they would follow the same schedule. It would basically be all the instruction taking place in the morning.
How much more now?
And, they would mirror that in-person schedule. It would just be done through the remote platform.
Okay, I just want to be clear because, it does sound like so I'm planning myself to send my children, but obviously if that changes and we're now all remote, my concern is, like everybody else, that the instruction that the elementary level got, at least as far as I had experience in, was not. I taught my son. I got a lot of, this is assigned, this is due, this is assigned, this is due, but I would expect that this time the instruction would be given by the teacher. So I just want to make sure if that's the expectation, that's fine. If you're not sending out another plan based on all remote, that's fine as well. I just want to understand that correctly. That's all.
Yeah, as I indicated, we have increased the rigor and the expectations for the remote learning. So I think that parents will see a noticeable difference from what took place in the spring.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Wait a minute, Grant. We're going to cut it off soon.
Well, we have three more questions.
No, we have 5 now.
No, we have 3 in line. There's 3 in line.
All right, we have 3 more questions. So please don't anybody else come on because these are going to be the last 3 we answer today. And if anybody has any follow-up ideas, feel free to email the superintendent or the assistant superintendents.
Georgianne. Georgianne, it looks like you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Hi, thank you for taking my question. How are you? Quick question. In terms of my daughter's at the Montville High School, she'll be a sophomore. In terms of the clubs and activities, I know it said in your plan that they would be taken up on individual basis. Will there be clubs, like my daughter is not necessarily into sports, which I know are actively practicing now, but she's more of the photography, key club and other club kid. Will those most likely be available to them virtually, especially maybe like photography club, etc.?
Some of those clubs, we are working with the principals to get their recommendations in terms of the the number and types of clubs that we feel can effectively run in a virtual environment. And, we'll be bringing that recommendation to the board, but not all of our extracurricular activities will be able to run.
Okay, I understand that. I understand that only because of the contact, but I know there's a lot of sports like cheer, football, et cetera, volleyball, where they're touching all the same balls. I just want to make sure that those kids that aren't doing sports are also being considered and being able to do things with their classmates, et cetera. So it sounds like you're thinking about that, and that's good.
Yeah.
And one last question. I'm sorry?
There will be some opportunity.
Okay, great. Thank you. And one last question. Will there be, if we choose to send our child in person, will there be a liability waiver that the parents will have to sign that if, God forbid, they do contract the disease, the illness, that the school will not be liable?
We are not anticipating that type of a waiver.
Okay. That's about all my questions. Thank you for answering.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don Jure Agual. You're muted.
Hi, can you hear me?
One more after this.
Yeah, I think I can hear you better.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this afternoon. So I just have two questions. I have a middle schooler going to Lazar. You mentioned that in Lazar, if we do send the child in person and then in the middle of the semester or marking period, we decide to bring them all remote, the decision will be taken in good faith. But is there going to be any lag time in between that? Like, let's say, after 3 days, as some other parent asked, and the 4th day we want to start remote, can we do that as immediately as that, or do we have to still wait? That's one question. The second question is, if we do opt in to send the kid on the bus, and depending on how many kids are going on the bus, how is the social distancing practiced on the bus itself? Let's say full capacity, the bus is running at full capacity. Those are the two questions. Thank you.
The first question, we will deal with the students who want to transition back and forth during the middle of the marking period. We will deal with those on a case-by-case basis. I don't imagine that there would be a lag time involved there. With regard to transportation, our buses will not be full, and we are trying to space students out so that there's 1 to a seat to a row. But we're trying our best to provide social distancing, but the students will obviously, they'll be, it may not be a full 6 feet spreading them apart on the bus.
Okay, thank you. And then just in regards to bus again, is the bus driver going to enforce that everybody is wearing a mask when they board the bus, or is that only applicable once they enter the school building?
Student cannot get on the bus if they're not wearing a mask.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our last question, Elizabeth Crosstup.
I'll set a comment before we close.
Elizabeth, are you there? Elizabeth went to lunch.
See what?
Went to lunch.
Elizabeth?
All right, Elizabeth, you can send me, you can email me your question, and I'd be happy to answer it.
Before we adjourn, I just would like to thank all of the parents who called in. I know the lady a while ago said there were 39, so we must have exceeded 50 questions, and I hope your questions were all answered. I also would like to thank my colleagues for taking Saturday morning and part of Saturday afternoon out to join us, and the administration. I appreciate everything that you have done for the Montville school system. As I said before, it's still very fluid, so keep tuned to the TV, see what's happening, and our next board meeting is on August 18th. I would now entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
Mike O'Brien has his hand up.
Motion by Mr. O'Brien,
Seconded by Michelle.
seconded by Mr. Zuckerman. All in favor?
Yes. Yes.
Aye. Opposed?
You guys.
Anybody not want to adjourn? Okay, have a good rest of the weekend. And again, thank you all for coming. Have a great day.